What's there to really say about Silent Hill that hasn't been said before? It's a masterpiece of a game from the waking moments to the final shut-eye. Every moment spent in the town of Silent Hill is truly haunting and beautiful. It's one of gaming's finest moments and a crown jewel of the PS1 catalog. So what are we gonna do here?
I'm in danger!
Well, we're gonna play through the game in the year 2025 and try our best to experience the game as if it was our first time to some degree. Then we'll do some analysis on everything afterwards, but only in the context of this game. So anything that's established in future titles we won't be using. Mostly. And hopefully by the end of this video I've made a good enough argument as to why this one's the best. And you'll feel the same in that regard. Or maybe you already know. We got a long road ahead of us, so let us wake and begin this deconstruction of Silent Hill. This is Harry Mason, our protagonist, and the world's best dad. If you're the type of person to just skip, this may feel a bit jarring to you. Silent Hill puts its intro literally at the beginning of the game. While it may seem like it's just teasing things to come and giving an overall idea of the atmosphere of the game, the last portion with Harry driving and the cop disappearing is the lead up to our very first moments in-game. Once we have control of Harry, his first thought is where Cheryl could have gone. She was a little girl sitting passenger with her sketchbook. We make our way back to check out the crash and the car does look pretty beat up, but no Cheryl in sight. We continue forward and then run into Cheryl. Harry calls out to her, but she doesn't respond. Instead, she wanders off and we chase after her. I can't help but notice how dreamlike this entire sequence feels, with Cheryl slowly moving into the fog before disappearing completely, and Harry being helpless to the vanishing act. Following Cheryl as best as we can, we come across a gate with a very defined sign: Beware of Dog. Upon entering, we're greeted by this grisly image and sirens in the distance. I love the camera in this game. I feel like the general impression of Silent Hill would be fixed camera angles, and while there are some, like in this scene, it is an incredibly dynamic camera for the time period. Now, I don't play too many PS1 games nowadays, but having the camera zoom out and then zoom back in is just unnerving, especially with the soundscape here. It gives off this feeling of being watched. There's also this whole descent aspect to it. Making our way further in, it gets darker and all the snow falling has now turned to rain. There's this sound of creaking in the distance that we find out is coming from a broken wheelchair alongside a gurney, with this pounding metallic sound now coming from under the sirens. We have no choice but to follow this trail of rust or blood until we come across pieces of flesh and remains before ultimately coming across a tied up, hollowed out body and quickly being attacked after. We're helpless to this attack as this is a mandatory death. We wake up once more and meet the cop from earlier.
Was I dreaming?
How do you feel?
Oh, like I've been run over by a truck. But I'm alright, I guess.
A couple things to note about this scene. Harry is on vacation, Cheryl is 7, and Sybil is from the town over. She also hasn't seen anyone aside from Harry. I just love that she gives this random man a gun. I'm gonna chalk it up to this dreamlike nature of the game, or maybe it's just a game being a game. Either way, we're introduced to Silent Hill's healing system, health drinks. We'll find first aids laying around as well, and those count as a full heal, while the drinks only cover a small portion. We'll pick up a knife, one of the many varieties of melee weapons we'll come across, alongside a notepad to save our game and a map. Your first time through the town of Silent Hill, the map is godsend. It's extremely useful in the sense of navigation, but the real flavor stems from the marking Harry does across the game, making notes of notable locations alongside marking any routes that would be cut off. It's small details that, one, helps the player, but two, really adds this layer of immersion. Before we can leave, we'll be interrupted by the radio, probably the most iconic aspect of the series.
What's that? Huh, radio. What's going on with that radio?
The radio, as the scene suggests, alerts us to the many dangers we'll come across. Exiting the cafe, Harry gives us a starting point, the alleyway we first investigated. Something to note that I didn't really notice my first time around were these different colored buildings. Pink symbolizes major locations, but purple tends to be side areas we can visit, usually holding extra goodies. We head back to the location, but instead of finding a path that continues forward, it's now a dead end. We'll find another melee weapon and a note that says, "To school," giving us an indication of where Cheryl might have gone. Most of the pathways are just no longer there. Major sections of the street just lost to the abyss or some sort of earthquake. At one of these broken off sections, we'll find more Cheryl sketches. Doghouse, Levin Street. Ignoring the remaining blood-splattered pages, we make our way to the said Levin Street to find a doghouse with a key. We enter inside the building to find the back door locked with 3 keypad locks, alongside a map that has bloodstained marks and the words, "Keys for Eclipse." Each of these marked locations has a key we need. We find our first key in the open trunk of a police cruiser with the name Key of Lion. Our second key across some wooden planks and inside a mailbox titled Key of Scarecrow. And our final key we'll find next to a severed dog head named Key of Woodsman. My initial thoughts were Wizard of Oz upon this playthrough, but I couldn't for the life of me nail who Woodsman was. Never seeing the movie or reading the books, I didn't know his full name was Tin Woodsman. Most references to him I've heard have always been Tin Man. I also thought there might be some significance to each of the locations of said keys. The most obvious being the police cruiser and finding the lion key, as some would say courage is needed to be on the force, and that would link the character from the story to the key and our story. However, I couldn't pinpoint what it was the other 2 keys' link was. Each of those locations are meaningful when compared to the overall area we're currently exploring, whether it's through dynamic camera action, interactive objects, or it having its own area we have to enter. I thought the dog head nearby would be some sort of indication as to a brain, but the key we get there is the Woodsman key, and he was notable for wanting a heart in the story of Oz, not a brain. However, some trivia down in the wiki kind of solves our answers. Just a heads up, I don't like using wikis, especially in relation to fan wikis, mostly because they usually include some sort of fan theory somewhere instead of just facts, like here with the final boss encounter relating back to the Wizard of Oz characters. To me, that's not trivia as much as it's someone's theory. However, we can take the literal actions of these Wizard of Oz characters and apply them to the surrounding areas where we pick up the keys. I never read the book, so I wouldn't have been able to understand this reference, but the head of the dog kind of suggests something important at least. Like in the book Tin Man fending off a pack of wolves, which does seem to be kind of alluded to here. Next thing you know, you're gonna make me read Shakespeare or something. The other part of this that really threw me off was the mention of the eclipse, though I think this one is more literal due to our next scene with everything getting darker. We'll examine this a tad bit more later, but the Oz theme also has a literal interpretation as we ourselves are entering a new world. The only thing that's missing is our yellow brick road. Heading into the darkness and finding the entrance to the school brings us to our first big explorable location, Midwich Elementary. We pick up the school map and begin exploring, coming across the infirmary which serves as our main save room, and then enter into the reception room to find this odd painting that Harry has some commentary on. Outside here, we'll have 3 bloody notes that will serve as our points of interest for the school. The first says, 10 o'clock, Alchemy Laboratory. Gold in an old man's palm, the future hidden in his fist. Exchange for sage's water. The second, 12 o'clock, a place with songs and sound. A silver guidepost is untapped and lost tongues. Awakening at the ordained order. And the last, 5 o'clock, darkness that brings the choking heat. Flames rend the silence, awakening the hungry beast. Open time's door to beckon prey. It's essentially a to-do list, starting with 10 and ending with 5, giving us a starting point with the alchemy lab, or in this case, chemistry lab. Leaving to the courtyard, we'll come across the main enemy of this area, and with the handgun Sybil gave us,
That fuck 'em up.
Before heading to our point of interest, we check out the bathroom and overhear a child crying. As for why, who knows? We can't even get some flavor text for interacting. And Silent Hill has a lot of these odd rooms. You ever see a key sticking out of a faucet? Because don't worry, you will. Like the note said, we'll come across a wallmaster clutching onto something. The solution for this is pretty simple, as right next door is the chemical needed. Drenching the hand in the substance will open the palm to give us the gold medallion. Down in the courtyard, we'll find a clock tower alongside a gold slot for the medallion. Slotting it in, we'll hear this mechanism kind of turn. Earlier, we found this piano room with a riddle in itself, but the piano was locked. Upon re-entering with the gold medallion in, we find the piano open and some bloody keys. The riddle we have here reads, "A tale of birds without a voice. First flew the greedy pelican, eager for the reward, white wings flailing. Then came a silent dove, flying beyond the pelican as far as he could. A raven flies in, flying higher than the dove just to show that he can. A swan glides in to find a peaceful spot next to another bird. Finally, out comes a crow, coming quickly to a stop, yawning and then napping. Who will show the way? Who will be the key? Who will lead to the silver reward?" This is gonna be your real first hurdle with the game. On my very first playthrough, I was stuck on this for a minute. Even this time around, I had to think about it for a good minute. A good riddle should have the solution within itself, but also red herrings alongside just enough information so you can piece together different solutions. Before we look at the piano, let's just take a look at what we have in terms of information. We have 5 birds: a pelican, dove, raven, swan, and a crow. Within those birds, we have 3 white birds and 2 black birds to represent the keys of the piano. This is reinforced by the whole raven flies high. Now, looking at the piano, we have a set number of keys we can play, and from the riddle we know in which order: 2 white, 1 black, 1 white, and finish on a black key. We also have some dead keys that don't play a single sound. The first red herring is all the mentions of silence. The silent dove, the gliding in, these would make you think of the dead keys. So you play with this idea of these 2 being dead keys and everything else being the other keys, except you would be fooled. It feels like you can be heavily fixated on the bird's position and ignore the biggest clue, which is the title of the riddle/poem, "A Tale of Birds Without a Voice." If you were to single out the dead keys, you would find the 5 keys you need to play, and then it's just as simple as finding the order. We know the pelican is first, and the dove flying the furthest of the white birds, the raven right above that, and the swan next to the dove, and the crow being the laziest, giving us the solution to this riddle.
Then brand the broken.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
We earn our silver medal and slot it in. However, the doors to the clock tower are still locked, but we do have that last bloody note that mentioned darkness that brings in the choking heat. The school does have a boiler room, but when we visited it earlier, we couldn't interact with it. Upon this revisit, we can now turn it on, and now have open Time's door. Entering, we descend down a ladder and hear those same sirens we heard earlier. Coming across a keep out sign and what looks like bottles littered everywhere. Climbing back up a ladder and ending up in the same place we just were, except things seem different, and for some reason, Harry seems to have forgotten or something.
Where am I? Have I been here before? I don't remember this being here before.
It's the same school, but at the same time, it isn't. The Premia Guide dubs this the other school, so we'll use this term for now. The interior of the school has also changed, and we'll come to find out rooms that were locked before are now accessible and vice versa. But certain locations like save rooms remain stagnant. I think this is to give some familiarity because Lord knows we need it. We begin exploring and come across tied up plushies and a rubber ball. One thing I noticed this time around is that this game is very linear in its design. Not that it doesn't have side objectives for you to explore or things of that nature, just that in these main areas, it's really hard to get lost. A lot of doors are typically locked and there's usually only one path forward. While down that path, we come across a table with playing cards and a unique looking yellow card with a silhouette of a key on the back. We kick some more enemies in the balls and proceed back to reception, where that painting has now manifested itself as real. Every surreal aspect of Silent Hill is captured in this store. A door with no keyhole or knob that slightly pushes and then upon further inspection has a slot that fits the yellow card we picked up earlier. There's moments like this littered throughout, just small interactions with these dream-esque landscapes. creating these horrifying yet oddly alluring details. And this sequence of hazy reality continues when we enter into the bathrooms, opening a stall to find a taped body, a bloody note that reads, "Leonard Rhine, the monster lurks," alongside a new weapon, our shotgun. The pounding in the score is also intensifying. We enter the girls' bathroom, and when we exit, we find ourselves on the second floor of the school. Going back in and exiting out again will bring us back to the first floor. Just a small glimpse of some future realm warping we'll be doing. We'll find a room full of phones, but they won't be usable. Trying to leave will trigger this interaction.
Daddy, help me. Daddy, where are you?
Cheryl!
Our very first audible interaction with Cheryl. There isn't too much to say on that for now, so let's proceed forward. Inside the locker room, we'll be jump scared and given the library. Library. Barry. Like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell. Using we'll find a book titled under the same name as we saw in the bathroom stall. So maybe Leonard Rhine is the author of said book. We read a small chapter titled Manifestation of Delusions. Poltergeists are among these negative emotions like fear, worry, or stress manifest into external energy with physical effects. Nightmares have, in some cases, been shown to trigger them. However, such phenomena do not appear to happen just to anybody. Although it's not clear why, adolescents, especially girls, are prone to such occurrences. Let's go ahead and break this down. The first section talks about poltergeist and makes mention of fear. Now, you may be thinking of ghost. However, in parapsychology, which is the study of alleged psychic phenomena, the definition of poltergeist is a manifestation of energy from a living person beyond their control. I know. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves just yet. This does coincide with the next passage as it makes mention of external energy, and then it follows up with the trigger being nightmares in some cases. Then it alludes to young girls being very prone to this. In the next room, there's another book we can read. Hearing this, the hunter armed with bow and arrow said, "I will kill the lizard." But upon meeting his opponents, he held back, taunting, "Who's afraid of a reptile?" At this, the furious lizard hissed, "I'll swallow you up in a single bite." Then the huge creature attacked, jaws opened wide. This was what the man wanted. Calmly drawing his bow, he shot into the lizard's gaping mouth. Effortlessly, the arrow flew, piercing the defenseless maw, and the lizard fell down, dead. This is alluding to the upcoming boss fight, but the more important thing about this is it being a story, or even arguably a fairy tale. We've explored the school as much as we can, leaving only the roof left. Up here we can spot the same symbol we saw on the ground, and this kind of drainage structure with a key stuck at the end. Plugging the hole using the rubber ball, we push the key out to the courtyard, picking up the classroom key. With the key in hand, the school section is essentially done, as the key just gives us a way to get to the boiler room and a few shortcuts to a safe station. Inside the boiler room, we descend downwards and come face to face with what we can only assume is the monster that was alluded to. In the middle of the arena is a body on fire with the same strange symbol underneath. We shoot at the monster as flickers of ember are the only sound accompanying us. A score begins to follow once the monster pauses and its head lightly splits, now chasing after us, splitting its head as we avoid what surely must be an instant death. Effortlessly, our bullet flew, piercing the flesh. As our scream becomes hazy and sirens whine in the distance, the dancing embers die and our screen black. And suddenly, an image of a woman as daylight approaches and she begins to vanish into the scenery.
What was that? Who in the hell was that?
Something I'm noticing as I sit here writing the script is that it seems as if Harry doesn't remember certain actions. When playing through the game, you're under the impression, of course, he was just in this dark arena, but I think it may be deeper than that due to what he ends up saying later. On the floor in front of us is the K. Gordon key as church bells ring in the distance. Harry circles the nearby church, and we make our way over there. It's funny how starting this game, your first introduction is of this foggy town. Monsters roam everywhere, and when you find a place to enter, you kind of feel this moment of safety. Then exit out, and things get worse as darkness approaches, and once again you find refuge inside a building. And then things get worse, and you kind of feel a sense of peace when you see the fog again. A really interesting dynamic they created here. Inside the church, we finally get some exposition. Kind of.
Were you ringing that bell?
I've been expecting you. It was foretold by gyromancy.
What are you talking about?
I knew you'd come. You want the girl, right?
The girl? You're talking about Cheryl.
I see everything.
You know something. Tell me.
Stay back. Nothing is to be gained from floundering about at random. You must follow the path. The path of the hermit concealed by flowers.
What? What are you talking about?
Here, the flowers, a cage of peace. It can break through the walls of darkness and counteract the wrath of the underworld. These will help you. Make haste to the hospital before it's too late.
Wait! Don't go yet!
Like I said, kind of. There's some things we'll unpack later, but the one I want to draw mention to now is gyromancy, because there is some linking to the earlier mentioned note about manifestation. Gyromancy is a method of divination, which is basically trying to see the future or gain some sort of knowledge through supernatural means. One method of this you might know is the use of tarot cards. Gyromancy, however, is drawing a big circle with letters, walking within that circle until your legs give out or you fall or trip, and then taking whatever letter you fell on and adding them up until you spell out something. So yeah, she seems a little off kilter. We pick up the aforementioned Flaros and drawbridge key. Using the key, we lower the bridge and cross it to the other side of the town. Before we go to the hospital, like she mentioned, we stop by the police station. There's some extra ammo we can get here, but more importantly, there's a few memos we can read. On the chalkboard, we can read what we assume is an officer's thoughts. Mention of a product in certain areas of Silent Hill, an odd plant in this region called White Claudia, and the summarization of dealer equals manufacturer. On the desk is another note. Coroner Seals called. Officer Gucci is unlikely to be murdered. He apparently died naturally. But medical records show Officer Gucci had no prior symptoms of heart disease. None of this means much of anything to us right now. Just seems like strange deaths have happened. So we continue on. Once we arrive at the hospital gates, we hear gunfire in the distance. And once again inside. Investigating the sound, we'll find a man clutching a revolver and one of those bird-like creatures dead at his feet.
Hold it! Stop! Don't shoot! Wait! I'm not here to fight. My name is Harry Mason. I'm in town on vacation.
Thank God, another human being.
Do you work here?
I'm Dr. Michael Kaufman. I work at this hospital.
So maybe you can tell me what's going on.
I really can't say. I was taking a nap in the staff room. When I woke up, it was like this. Everyone seems to have disappeared. And it's snowing out, this time of year. Something's gone seriously wrong. Did you see those monsters? Have you ever seen such aberrations? Ever even heard of such things? You and I both know creatures like that don't exist.
Yeah. Have you seen a little girl anywhere? I'm looking for my daughter. She's only 7, short, black hair.
She's missing. I'm sorry. But with all those monsters around, I highly doubt that she's... Sorry, I didn't mean to alarm you. Your wife, she's here with you?
She died 4 years ago. Now it's just me and my daughter.
I see. I'm sorry. Well, I'd better be going. I can't just sit around here doing nothing.
So long. Good luck out there.
Not much to add to the Kaufman interaction, but we will have some interesting things to talk about once we meet our final character on this journey. We grab the hospital map and begin our exploration of the second big area. We go room by room, seeing if we can find anything of interest. The first being this newspaper with an article cut out. It was clearly important to someone for reasons why, we don't know. Inside the doctor's office, we'll pick up the basement map, kind of nudging us in that direction. And if that wasn't enough, in the connecting room is the basement key. In the kitchen, we can grab a plastic bottle, and inside the director's office, we can find a room ransacked, cabinet door swung open, books on the floor, and behind the desk, this red liquid on the floor. Harry has this interesting mention of this looking done on purpose. There isn't much else to do on this floor, so we descend down into the basement. There isn't much to do here either, aside from putting the power back on, granting us access to the elevator. 3 floors to choose from, and with us already exploring the first floor thoroughly, the second is the obvious stop. But our only entrance is locked. No biggie, we'll probably start from the 3rd floor and work our way down then. Well, we exhausted all our options on previous floors, and these doors aren't just locked doors, they're jammed and not gonna open. We enter back into the elevator and check the floor numbers, and this time we have access to the 4th floor. And as we step out, we get this vision of the girl from earlier entering into some sort of shop. Taking back control of Harry, we see we're back in the other world.
Bitch, that's cheating! I'm not dead yet!
I love this setup. We get to the hospital, and we think it's just gonna be this repeat of the school, exploring the normal part first, and then maybe the other version of it later, but being thrown straight into the scarier version is such a nice play on expectations. There's even this whole the hospital is kind of a sleep thing going on. No power, kind of dimly lit, until we turn the power back on, as if we were the one to wake it up. The sound cue of also finding out all the floors are locked is just so good. The game is also starting to tease us with our comfort. By this point, your maps are your lifeline, and they even gave us 2 here. Except on the 4th floor, we have no map, just walking blindly into the darkness, something that'll be expanded upon by the end of the game. All of the doors on the 4th floor are locked, as it's just meant as a way to connect to the other world, and down to the 3rd floor, where we can properly begin the hospital section of this game. Here we have another new enemy introduced, these nurses with bobs of pink flesh sticking out, and a bit later we'll run into the doctor variant. The 3rd floor will be our starting point. Checking out the bathroom, we'll find the major key item for this location, plates. Our first being the plate of turtle. The save room in this location also has something notable, an old usable VCR. We'll also come across some odd things we can interact with, like this birdcage and panel with screws. We won't find the needed key items for these here, but it is interesting they show up here. Over in room 306 is another plate, this one the plate of cats. The storeroom is the last room we can visit, which holds a blood pack for us. And with that, the only reason to visit the 3rd floor is to save the game. On the 2nd floor, we have room 201 that has a lighter for us, and in room 204, we have these tentacle vine-like things blocking off another plate for us. We give the good boys some blood and proceed to grab our next plate, the plate of the Hatter. The rest of the 2nd floor is blocked off by a locked door, and the door requires 4 plates. We only have 3, so we'll ignore the riddle for now and make our way down to the 1st floor. If we head back into the director's office, we'll find our last plate, the plate of heart, and we'll come across the goal of the hospital. The door to the examination room is locked, but we can hear sounds from behind it. This is where we need to get to, but we still have a couple of things we need to do. We've exhausted most of the doors in the hospital, but we do pick up a pretty neat hammer down in the basement. Examining our plates, we can notice the Alice in Wonderland theme, all titled after one of the characters from the story. This adds to the overall story of Silent Hill, but it's not relevant to the information needed for the riddle. The riddle reads, clouds flowing over a hill, sky on a sunny day, tangerines that are bitter, lucky four-leaf clover, violets in the garden, dandelions along a path, unavoidable sleeping time, liquid flowing from a slashed wrist. This is extremely simple, and I can't explain why I overthought this so hard. For some reason, my brain was thrown off by the dark gray, which I think is black. I thought the blue should be slotted together as these two are a pair, when the riddle clearly says no. I also thought, the first slot is the first slot, and that's where the first color should go, but instead, you go off the color of the riddle. So blue should go after the gray or whites, whatever color that is. On the other side, the hammer is put to use. Inside the operation room is the basement storeroom key, and in the room over, we'll find some disinfecting alcohol. Now, back into the creepy basement. In the newly unlocked room, we'll find a movable bookcase. After playing so many Resident Evil games, I gotta say it was kind of nice to watch Harry move it by himself with no input by me. I swear, I'm not being lazy, it's just, it's nice. This hidden room has this hidden door floor as if things couldn't be even weirder. But we can't access it due to the overgrown vines. So we add a dash of alcohol, a little bit of fire, a spoonful of sugar, and put the lime in the coconut. Down into the hatch and this long gated hallway, we enter what can only be referred to as a prison. No outside windows, everything down here feels sealed off. No color, and despite being in the other world, it looks regular, which adds to this resounding dread. Our first room only has a videotape in it. Ignore the body. The second room has nothing in it, only the sound of pounding metal chains, or maybe something underneath us pounding up. The main room of interest is this one.
What's this? Looks like someone's been here.
We finally get a name to the face we've been seeing around town, Alessa. But there's a couple of things different. She appears much younger than the girl we saw earlier, but it does match the girl in our dream/vision. Next to the portrait is the examination room key. And technically we can close things off with this, but first let's check out the videotape. Whoa, that's next time. Let's try that again. It's really hard to make out what the person is saying or even who the person is. There's a few bits and pieces, like we can clearly hear child and why repeated a few times. Let's ignore that for now and see what's behind the door in the examination room.
Finally, someone else who's okay.
Who are you?
My name's Lisa Garland. What's yours?
Harry Mason.
Harry, tell me what's happening here. Where is everybody? I must have gotten knocked out. When I came to, everyone was gone. It's awful.
So you don't know anything either. Great. I just don't get it. It's like this is all some kind of bad dream.
Yeah, a living nightmare.
Let me ask you, have you seen a little girl around here? Short, black hair, 7 years old?
A 7-year-old girl. What, she's your daughter?
Yes.
A 7-year-old girl. I can't say that I have. I was unconscious all this time. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Do you know anything about all that weird stuff in the basement?
No. Why? Is there something down there?
You don't know? Don't you work here?
We're under strict orders never to enter the basement storeroom. So I really don't know. What did you say was down there?
Well, it's... Damn! My head.
What's wrong? Harry? Harry, let me help you. Harry?
Was I dreaming?
You were too late.
It's you.
Yes, Dahlia Gillespie.
Tell me everything you know. What's going on?
Darkness. The town is being devoured by darkness. Strength must overcome petty desire, childish sleep talk. I knew this day would come.
What are you talking about? I don't understand a word of this.
Believe the evidence of your eyes. The other church in this town, that is your destination. This is beyond my abilities. Only you can stop it now. Have you not seen the crest marked on the ground all over town?
So that's what I saw in the schoolyard. What does it mean?
It is the mark of Samael. Don't let it be completed.
Hey, wait!
Okay, that is a lot of information dropped on our head. Let's start with our interaction with Lisa. This is the part that I mentioned earlier that is interesting to me. Every person that we've run into, minus Sybil, mentions waking up. And even within the context of the conversation with Lisa and Dahlia, there's countless references to sleep and nightmares. And before Harry can tell Lisa what he saw down there, he passes out and wakes up again. In fact, multiple times throughout this game, we see Harry waking up. Waking up from the crash, waking up after being killed, waking up here in the hospital. Are we supposed to read this as everything is a dream? I'm not sure. In this upcoming segment, we even get put directly into Harry's shoes, wondering what's real. What's that also about no staff being allowed in the storeroom basement? Maybe we might be able to ask Coffin about it later with him being a doctor who works there after all. Dahlia sometimes feels like she's speaking gibberish. She jumps from one thing to another and doesn't really feel like she's talking with Harry as much as she's telling him things. The mark of Samael, the town being overtaken by darkness, and how we're the only one who can stop it. Why us? The one standout from this conversation for me is the too late. What does she mean by that? I think I have an idea we might be able to piece together later. We grab the green antique shop key and recall Dahlia saying our next destination is the other church. Peeking into the phone book will give us the location of the antique shop, and we head out from the hospital. Our destination is at the top of the map, but this ringing ambulance sound makes it a bit of a headache to navigate towards. Okay, much better. When we arrive, we can see this is the exact same place we saw Alessa in that kind of dream we had. There isn't much inside here, but we can move the cabinet to reveal a hole in the wall.
What's this?
Harry!
Sybil?
Harry and Sybil catch up, mostly going over what little information they have. Harry with his run-ins with Dahlia, and Sybil making mention of seeing Cheryl or a little girl head into the lake, but confused because she was walking on air. Sybil also adds some details about Silent Hill having a drug trafficking ring, but let's hone in on the more interesting part of the conversation.
Sybil?
Yeah?
Do you know anything about... well, like some other world? It's like some kind of bad dream.
What are you talking about?
I'm not quite sure. I try to make sense of it, but then my mind goes blank. Everything's dark there, and I hear sirens in the distance. I met this nurse, Lisa, It's like I was there, but not really. It's all a blur, like some kind of hallucination, you know?
I have no idea what you're talking about, Harry.
Oh. I was just wondering. Never mind.
Harry, you're tired.
Yeah, maybe.
This small line from Sybil is so interesting to me. She hasn't experienced the other world. In fact, the only person we've met that seems to acknowledge the other world is Lisa. On the other side of the hole, we walk down this hallway into another hole and find an altar with a chalice that has powder in it. Alongside this image picturing this demonic entity, there isn't much else to do here but to leave. Doing so will cause the chalice to light up, and as Harry turns to the fire, it cuts to Sybil investigating the hole herself, just to find us gone.
Where am I?
Harry,
Lisa? Then I'm in the hospital?
you were having a bad dream.
Was I? Hey, you don't look too good. Are you okay?
I'm fine. Nothing you need to worry about.
Well, if you're sure. Lisa, do you know a woman named Dahlia Gillespie?
Oh yeah, that crazy Gillespie lady. She's kind of famous around here. She never sees anybody, so I don't know that much about her. But I heard her kid died in a fire, and supposedly she's been crazy ever since.
Well, she says the town is being devoured by the darkness. Do you have any idea what she's talking about?
The town devoured by the darkness. Yes, I think I do. Before this place was turned into a resort, the townspeople here were on the quiet side. Everybody followed some kind of queer religion. Weird occult stuff, black magic, that kind of thing. As young people moved away, the people figured they'd been summoned by the gods. Evidently, things like that used to happen around here all the time. Before the resort, there really wasn't anything else out here. Everyone was so flipped out, you gotta blame it on something. Then a lot of new people came in and everybody clammed up about it.
A cult?
Last time I heard anything about it was, gosh, years ago. When several people connected with developing the town died in accidents. People said it was a curse. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm rambling. I'll shut up.
We find ourselves waking back up in the antique shop. Before we try to head back to Lisa for answers, let's break down some of the things she mentioned. First thing to take note of is Lisa's melancholy demeanor. She then tells us about Dahlia Gillespie, and how Dahlia had a child she lost to a fire, but Dahlia seems to be a recluse, at least to Lisa's recollection. We then get the biggest info drop, that the town of Silent Hill had very queer beliefs. Harry attributes this to a cult, and we have confirmation of this with the presence of the other church. She then tells us about people dying in accidents, who had connections with developing the town. You can't help but draw some sort of similarities with the ongoing accidents we read about. We'll delve deeper into this, but for now let's try to find our way back to the hospital. Most of the pathways once again are blocked, so we take a detour into the shopping mall and then up some escalators.
Daddy, help me. Please, where are you?
Cheryl!
Strange images, the same repeating mark, but also a red glyph, alongside images of Alessa and Cheryl, with the same words we heard over the phone at the school. Was that somehow a recorded message being played back to us? I'm not sure. We continue up the escalators to the sound of our radio going off. We can spot a body off in the distance with this worm-like thing sprouting out, but as we cross, we fall into a pile of sand. This brings us to a dirt-filled arena for our second boss fight and our final firearm, the hunting rifle. Overall, this is a pretty simple fight, just dodging when the larvae pops out and shooting at it before it goes away. We don't finish the fight here though, as the creature pops through the wall creating an exit. We make our way to the hospital running into the same creatures from before, yet somehow looking more nightmarish. Inside the hospital, we'll quickly run into Lisa.
Harry!
Glad you're okay.
Thank God you came back. I was scared to be here all alone.
I'm here now. I was worried too. I'm real happy to see you. Lisa, can you tell me how to get to the lake?
The lake? You take Bachman Road.
The road's blocked.
Well, that's the only way out there.
Are you sure? There's gotta be another way.
Wait! I just remembered something!
What?
There's a waterworks over by my old elementary school. It's been abandoned for years. There's an underground tunnel out there used for inspections or something. I remember hearing it runs all the way to the lake.
Really? You think I can get to the lake from there?
I've never been down in there myself, so I'm not positive. Besides, it's all fenced off to keep people out.
If there's a chance, I've got to try.
Harry, don't go! I don't want to be alone. It's so scary, I can't stand it.
How about coming with me? This may not be the safest place in the world either. I can't promise you anything, but I'll do my best to protect you.
No, somehow I feel I'm not supposed to leave this place. Oh, Harry, I'm so scared. I'm cold.
Look, just wait here a little longer. I'll be back as soon as I find my daughter.
Harry?
Couple of things to note. One, I love how Harry tries to bring Lisa along, just reinforcing that Harry is a pretty good guy. Two, Lisa says she feels as if she isn't supposed to leave this place. And three, I guess neither are we, since immediately leaving the hospital there is only one way to go. This brings us to a rematch in our third boss fight, this giant moth creature. We basically kill this thing off screen, but its head reminds me a lot of some sort of Oni mask. We return back to the fog world to make our way to the area Lisa mentions, break down a lock, and enter probably the worst section of the game. Not the biggest fan of these sewer sections. Thankfully, they're pretty straightforward, and we end up in the resort section of Silent Hill quickly. Now, we could go directly where we need to, but let's stop by Annie's bar first.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I guess so. But I'm beat. I thought I was a goner there. So how'd it go? Did you find a way out?
No, not yet. How about you?
Zip. But it's too soon to give up. This craziness can't go on forever. A military rescue squad should be here any time now. If they come through the town, we're home free.
I hope so.
I better get going. This isn't the time to stand around flapping our gums.
Do you know a girl called Alessa?
No.
This begins the Kaufman side quests. By the back pool table, we can pick up a key with the number 3 slightly visible, and also a receipt. If we were to further inspect the receipt, we can see the number 0473, and that the receipt comes from a store called Indian Runner. Well, that's only around the corner. Arriving there, we can see there's a padlock barring entry, but we can just enter the code on the receipt, 0473, granting us access. The store seems a bit trashed, ransacked, just like the office from earlier. Or maybe they just forgot to put away stock, who really knows with this town. Behind the counter, we can pull open the drawer to get the safe key and read this red colored journal. August 20th. He came by. I handed over the package that the woman left here. September 12th. He showed up at Norman's too. Don't want to be involved with the likes of them anymore, but I'm getting creeped out, even more than before. Thought of leaving town, but I'm afraid of what will happen if I do. Behind us, we can spot a picture of Norman, who seems to have run the motel. And using the key on the safe, we can find drugs packed in. This pretty heavily implies Kaufman's involvement with the ongoing drug trafficking in Silent Hill, but why? Our investigation doesn't end here, as we read a paper giving us a list of supplies alongside the entrance code to the motel. We pop that number in and head inside to find a few goodies. It's the same newspaper from earlier, but with the article intact. It reads, "Investigation stalled. PTV dealers still at large. Suspicious deaths continue. Like the anti-drug mayor, a narcotics officer dies of a sudden heart failure of unknown origin. Norman's diary also makes an appearance. September 10th. Took package, told to sit on it a while. Don't want to get involved, but can't disobey. He's probably linked to the death of the mayor and others." So from these 2 journal entries, we can gather that both the owner of the convenience store and Norman didn't want any part of Kaufman's drug ring. It also seems that a woman would bring a package. Kaufman would then take that package and then would give a package to Norman. From the newspaper article, we also get the name of said drug, PTV. And from the information earlier and here, anyone looking too deep or trying to stop said ring ended up dying. Again, we have this glaring why, but we don't have any answers to it. I think the most basic, judging just from Kaufman's appearance, which seems more businessy than say doctor, would be money. We can find an old motorcycle in the garage that was dusted specifically around the gas tank. Outside are all the rooms, but we only care about room 3. Inside is a key stuck under the flooring, which we can use our magnet to pick up, and then see what's inside the gas tank. A glass vial filled with the same stuff we saw at the hospital, but before we can examine what it is, Kaufman comes in.
Give me that.
What is this?
That's none of your business. Instead of messing with that, how about coming up with a way to get out of here? You shouldn't be hanging around here goofing off. What do you think you're doing? You want to get yourself killed? Get out of here.
Okay, take it easy.
Unless you want to die, keep your mind on business. Got it?
I love how Harry was like, I just wasted my time. Both this and grabbing the plastic bottle with red liquid is all set up for the best ending possible, to which there are 4. Don't worry, we'll go over all of them. For now, let's make our way to the pier. As we reach closer, the sirens start to whine in the distance, and for the first time, we see the transition to the other world. All the other times has us entering through a door and we're suddenly there. Even Harry makes mention of this time being different. We've now entered the final act of the game. We continue to make our way to the pier and stop at a boat, entering inside to find a corpse once again tied to the wall. In the back room, we'll be greeted by Sybil.
Sybil,
Harry!
how did you get back here?
I followed the sewer. Were you the one who cut the fence?
Yeah. I'm glad you made it. I was worried about you.
You were worried? Where did you disappear to? Never mind. I want to know what's going on here. What is with this town?
This may sound really off the wall, but listen to me. You've got to believe me. I haven't gone crazy and I'm not fooling around. At first, I thought I was losing my mind. But now I know I'm not. It's not me. This whole town. It's being invaded by the other world. By a world of someone's nightmarish delusions come to life. Little by little, the invasion is spreading, trying to swallow up everything in darkness. I think I'm finally beginning to understand what that lady was talking about.
Harry, hold on a minute. I don't get it.
Look, I don't understand it all myself. I guess I can't explain it.
Well, what's making this happen?
I don't know that either. But I do know Cheryl is there.
There?
Under whoever created this darkness. Cheryl is somewhere and she needs my help.
Harry, this whole thing's been a major blow to you. You need to rest.
Sybil,
Before Dahlia comes in, let's talk a bit about what Harry says here. He tries his best to explain what's going on, and can finally talk about the other world. Remember, beforehand, anytime he mentioned certain aspects, he would get hazy or even pass out. If we want to reach a little here, we can say it's Dream Harry and our Harry finally merging. His head is clear. He also knows where Cheryl is, under whoever created this. I think this establishes Harry and Cheryl having a connection of sorts that, yes, we'll delve deeper into. Don't worry, it's coming, trust me. For now, let's hear what Dahlia says.
The demon is awakening, spreading those wings.
Dahlia Gillespie.
Was it not as I said? I see it all now. Yes, everything. Hungry for sacrifice, the demon will swallow up the land. I knew this day would come. And what's more, the task is almost finished. There's only 2 left. To seal this town to the abyss, the mark of Samael. When it is completed, all is lost. Even in daytime, darkness will cover the sun. The dead will walk and martyrs will burn in the fires of hell. Everyone will die.
So what am I supposed to do? I've got to save Cheryl.
It is simple. Stop the demon. The demon taking that child's form. Stop it before your daughter becomes a sacrifice. Before it is too late. Stop it! Stop it!
What do I do?
Go to the lighthouse on the lake. And to the center of the amusement park. Make haste. You are the only hope.
Look, Harry. I really don't get what's going on. But if there's a chance we can save your daughter, I'm in. I'll check out the amusement park. You go to the lighthouse.
Sybil, thanks.
You will need to use it.
Use what?
The flowers. Only with that can you stop it.
What about Sybil?
Again, a lot to go over and break down here. Dahlia makes mention of awakening once more, but this time in the context of a demon and that it's both using this town as a sacrifice alongside taking the form of a child. Well, throughout our journey, we haven't seen many people, let alone children, just Cheryl and who we assume to be Alessa. Harry is the only one able to stop this according to Dahlia, and I wonder why that is. She also mentions the task is almost finished as there are only 2 left. At first, I was really stuck on these words. What 2? And I think I have an idea as to what or who, but first we have to go to the location she mentioned. Now, could these be the 2, the lighthouse and the amusement park? I'm not sure, but we have to use the flowers in order to stop it. At the lighthouse, we ascend up this spiral staircase to be greeted by the mark, but this time illuminating, and also Alessa before she disappears as usual. We descend back down and return to the boat to wait for Sybil, but something seems wrong, so we head out to search for her. Our search brings us to the amusement park. Yes, there was some sewers beforehand, but I hate the sewers. I will note, though, that there was a cutscene of Sybil being knocked out by who? I'm not sure. I realize I've been saying I'm not sure a lot, but it's worth it. I think so. Just stay with me, okay? I love the amusement park, and I wish it was a bit more expanded to its own area. It's these normal places to me that always make the best horror locations. Seeing the rides in the distance just on this forever loop strikes the perfect balance of liminal horror. And well, you also have these little guys around still to help with the actual horror.
Dad, fuck 'em up.
On the merry-go-round, we come across Sybil waking up in a wheelchair with eyes colored red. This is technically the next boss fight, but if we were to damage her, well, we'd kill her. So we splash her with some Kool-Aid or something. We then see this creature, slug, parasitic thing leap from what I only can guess is her back, and have this very important cutscene.
Harry, why did they take your daughter? Why her?
I'm not sure myself. But, you know, Cheryl isn't my biological daughter. I actually haven't told her yet. She probably already knows anyway, though. We found her abandoned on the side of the highway. Nobody knew where she came from. We didn't have any kids of our own. My wife was sick, and it didn't look like she was getting any better. So we took Cheryl in.
So in that case...
there might be some connection between Cheryl and this town.
So what do you do now?
Cheryl is my daughter. I will save her no matter what.
I love how this scene just reinforces Harry's bond and love for Cheryl, but immediately we get another important scene.
I figured you'd show. Hold it right there. I don't know who you are or what you're trying to do, and I don't care. Just one thing. Let Cheryl go. That's all I ask. What? Damn! Huh? What is this? Where's Cheryl? Give me back my daughter.
We meet at last, Alessa.
Dahlia Gillespie? Where's Cheryl? Where is she?
Alessa, this is the end of your little game.
Mama?
Could she be...
You've been a ghastly little pest, haven't you, Alessa? I was careless, thinking you couldn't escape from our spell. But Mommy didn't know how much you'd grown. That's why I couldn't catch you all by myself. But what a pity, yes? Now you're half indebted to this man for his help.
Hey, what are you talking about?
Alessa, my dear little girl, there is one thing left I need you to do for me.
No!
Get away from me!
Bad girl. Everything is ready. Let's go home.
What's going on here?
Okay, big cutscene here. The first thing to go over is Alessa being Dahlia's daughter. However, from the information we know, Alessa died in a fire, and this also would have been years ago. Alessa wouldn't still be a young child. On top of that, at least in this space, Alessa has some sort of psychic powers able to create a force field and push Harry back. The Flareos also started to react for some reason and shot this blue light at Alessa. It didn't seem to cause any physical damage to her though, as far as I'm aware. Dahlia continues this trend of not really talking to us and hyperfixated on Alessa. As she mentions everything is ready but needs her to do one more thing. As to what, we can only assume as the Flareos begins to glow again. Seems there was also a spell involved that trapped Alessa. We wake up to Lisa again, but she seems to have bags under her eyes and this twitch. Something clearly happened since our last meeting.
Harry.
Lisa. What happened? Where's Alessa and Dahlia?
Harry, listen. Something you said before has been bothering me. I just can't get it out of my head.
What is it, Lisa?
So I went to look in the basement, even though I was scared as hell. Like you said, there were these creepy rooms, but nothing really unusual down there. But while I was down there, I got this weird feeling. Like I'd been there before. Like something happened there, but I can't quite remember somehow. What was it? Harry, help me. I'm so scared. I can't take this.
It's only a temporary thing. You're in shock from when you were knocked out. Don't fret about it. You'll remember after a while.
No. You don't understand.
Wait! Where do you think you're going?
Lisa is clearly distraught. She has this feeling of knowing, but unable to realize why. She seeks comfort, and Harry tries his best, but Lisa runs off. Once again, we're back at the hospital, but are we really? There's this pounding sound once again coming from the basement. This has been something we've heard across multiple locations now. When you save the game, you can find the name of where we are. Nowhere. Walking across this gated path, the pounding intensifies, and the elevator opens up, welcoming us once again.
I'm being summoned. What happened in this town? What could be making things like this? I have a feeling if I take the elevator down, I'll find it. Cheryl.
This is our final location of the game, and it is my absolute favorite. Remember how we've had small moments of not having a map? Well, this area doesn't give us one at all. Luckily, it's pretty straightforward, only allowing you access to so many doors at a time. The game, while already having very surreal moments, feels like it saved everything for this area. This is where the key in the faucet comes from. We also have the birdcage returning with sound effects of fluttering. We have images of Alessa running down the halls, puzzle rooms with just images, unexplainable monsters and fridges, rooms that make no sense like the antique room and the school somehow being here, with a lone desk in the middle. It is such an experience on your first time through. Past the schoolroom, we'll find pliers and a screwdriver. The pliers grant us access to our very first key. I believe I'm going to say this correctly, I might butcher it. Key of Ophil. See, here in this place we have different coded doors with names on them, each bringing us to a different corridor with new doors. The big thing to notice here is these symbols seem to match the symbols we saw on the TV screen way back when. Our first new corridor has a few puzzles for us, namely the Grim Reaper and this astrology one. Now, your first time with this puzzle might be really hard because what does any of this mean? It's just images of animals, half-breeds, and numbers. Don't think about it too hard, as you get a pretty hefty hint with this image of a ram. When you look at the next pic with the sharks, The only conclusion would be limbs they were counting. The only exception is this balance scale. So when we count the limbs, it's pretty simple. The first one with the centaur is 6, 2 arms, 4 legs. Next, we have 2 children, 4 arms, 4 legs for 8. Then we have our bull for 4. Giving us the Stone of Time. Now, what about the Reaper puzzle? In the back of this corridor is a slate we can read giving us a hint that pretty much hands you the solution. Young and old line up in order of age. So we put the list in order of youngest to oldest and get the word alert. There isn't much here, but in the way back we can find the Amulet of Solomon, and on our way out, Lisa again.
Harry,
Lisa, what's the matter with you?
I get it now. Why I'm still alive even though everyone else is dead. I'm not the only one who's still walking around. I'm the same as them. I just hadn't noticed it before.
Lisa.
Stay by me, Harry. Please. I'm so scared. Help me. Save me from them. Please. Harry?
My absolute favorite scene in this game, alongside my favorite character in this game. It's such a heartbreaking moment. Lisa is the only person we truly had a normal conversation with. She was the most helpful out of anyone we ran into, giving us information on the town, helping us to the lakeside, and all she wanted was comfort of someone. She was scared, felt alone, and had the realization that she was just like everyone else here. I assume this to mean the rest of the nurses, but I'm not quite sure. If we enter back, we'll find her gone, but we can find her diary. I asked doctor to let me quit being in charge of that patient. It's too weird. Still alive, but with wounds that won't heal. Told the doctor I quit. Won't work at the hospital anymore. The room is filled with insects. Even with doors and windows shut, they get in to spite me. To the hospital. Feeling bad. Need to throw up, but nothing comes out. Vomiting only bile. Blood and pus flow from the bathroom faucet. I try to stop it, but it won't turn off. Need drug. Help me. There isn't much left in this hallway. We return back to the antique shop to use the Stone of Time to get the key of Haggith. We now have access to the elevator and take it to the second floor to find the shop from the shopping mall. Here we'll find a ring of contract and a crest of Mercury. On the third floor, we can find another altar, a bit similar to the one we saw much earlier, and on the side 2 photos. One titled The Light to the Future, and the other The Light Illuminating the Darkness. And on both sides, doors. Locked with a bunch of buttons. If we use our camera to snap a few shots, we'll find patterns appearing on both photos, giving us the combination to unlock both doors. In the door associated with the future, we'll find our birdcage key, and on the door associated with Illuminating the Darkness, we have one thing. A book that mentions White Claudia and the effects the seeds have. Hallucination, and ancient records show ties to religious ceremonies. Just from this, we can piece together a lot of things. You can also find a newspaper article about a fire. It's a continuation of the one we read earlier, at least it seems so. It would continue past the point of all the articles we saw so far, but maybe it was a bit too much on the nose for them to include, which is why it only shows up in the PAL version or the Japanese version. Fire broke out in town, 6 homes destroyed, charred body of Alyssa Gillespie, age 7 found in aftermath. Cause of fire currently under investigation. Investigations show source as basement of Gillespie home. Blaze now believed caused by malfunction of antique boiler. We can unlock the birdcage to give us Key of Phaleg. This brings us to the very last corridor that resembles the secret basement of the hospital. Entering the storage room, we find a bag of jelly beans, but Harry opens them in the worst way possible. I guess we can just take the Key of Bethor. In the room next door is the old hospital save room, except we can't save here. What we can do, though, is rewatch the tape we have. Instead of barely being watchable, we can see and hear things clearly this time around. This is like the continuation of Lisa's diary. We hear about a child who's barely alive and charred. It's safe to assume this is in reference to Alessa, with Alessa being the only known victim in this game to a fire. In one of the rooms, it looks like an attic. Here we have drawings all over the walls and a crying ghost Alessa in the corner. One of our key items is here, the Ankh. But let's take a moment to notice the words on the wall. Scribbled across most of the wall is help, a few mentions of kill, and a lot of drawings of eyes. There are a lot of similarities between what we're seeing here with Alessa and our last interaction with Lisa. We power down the generator and head back up the stairs to unscrew a panel to reveal one more key. Key of Eritron. Behind this door holds a cutscene for us.
Everything is going according to plan, sheltered in the womb.
But it's not done yet. Half the soul is lost. That is why the seed lies dormant.
And what soul remains captured in that husk is buried deep down in the subconscious.
Are you trying to say it won't work? That wasn't our agreement.
No, these are just stalling tactics. If we lend a hand, we will be able to get power. Never fear, the promise shall not be broken.
But the power we could draw now will be very weak. Almost nothing. Unless we get the other half of the soul.
We'll use a magical spell. Feeling this child's pain, it's sure to come.
But that will take time.
This really spells out why we're here, as in why Harry and Cheryl are here. Yes, Harry is on vacation, but from this we can gather two things. One, Alessa only has half of her soul. And two, Dahlia used a spell to call the other half back to the town, as a full vessel is needed for the cult's power. We pick up the disc of Ouroboros here, and then in the kitchen we use the ring we found to bind some chains to grab our last item, the dagger of Melikor. There is one last room we need to talk about, and it's Alessa's room. Even though we just found Alessa's hospital room, her actual room lines up where we find her original room in the real world, or real hospital, or that version. Her room holds a lot of information. We can find playing cards like we found at the school, we can find fairy tale books on her bookshelf, a fascination with insects and moths on her walls, her school uniform, and more importantly, drawings littered around the floor. There's 3 drawings we can see. The clearest one is of what I assume is a child's interpretation of a dog, that's colored red or pink. To the right we see 2 figures next to each other, a smaller purple one and a big green figure. And finally to our bottom left, we have fire rising from the bottom and a figure with wings. We'll save the dog for when we talk about enemy designs, but the other 2, I think we can pinpoint what they are. I want to assume the green image is of the antique shop. If Dahlia was an active cult member as we suspect, then Alessa may have spent a lot of time there, which the name of the shop is Green Lion Antique Shop, so perhaps a green lion. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but it's the only place I can recall currently of green being a prominent image. The winged person image I think is of the cult picture we find above the altar behind the antique shop. I thought there was another picture on the altar we find here and nowhere, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Regardless, I think it's safe to assume Alessa saw this image at some point and decided to draw it. The door in front of us is our final locked door, and on it says, "Thou possesses them. To guard thy spirit, evoke 5 rights, unveil thy fate." This is where we place all the items we picked up like the Ankh, and gain access to the end of the game. When we enter, we'll be greeted to this scene.
Come along. No, I don't want to.
Do what Mommy tells you now. I just want you to lend me a teeny bit of your power. That's all.
No. I don't want to do it.
It will make everyone happy, and it's for your own good, too.
Oh, but Mommy, I just want to be with you. Just two of us. Please understand.
Oh, yes, I see. Maybe Mommy has been wrong.
Mommy!
Why didn't I see this before? There's no reason to wait. Herein lies the mother's womb, containing the power to create life. I could have done it all myself.
Mommy?
We're really close to the end, and I promise we'll go over all of this. We head downstairs and confront Dahlia one more time.
I was shocked to realize the talisman of Metatron was being used. In spite of the lost soul returning at last. Just a little longer and all would have been for naught. It's all because of that man. We must be thankful to him. Even though Alessa has been stopped, his little girl has to go. What a pity.
Freeze! What in the devil's name? Ugh!
Dahlia.
Well, well, well. To think you'd make it this far.
Where's Cheryl? What have you done to her?
What are you talking about? You've seen her many times, restored to her former self.
I'm in no mood for jokes.
Don't you see? She's right there.
That's absurd.
You are the only one who thinks so.
Why? Why are you doing this?
It's been a long 7 years. For the 7 years since that terrible day, Alessa has been kept alive, suffering a fate worse than death. Alessa has been trapped in an endless nightmare from which she never awakens. He has been nurtured by that nightmare, waiting for the day to be born. That day has finally come. The time is nigh. Everyone will be released from pain and suffering. Our salvation is at hand. This is the day of reckoning, when all our sorrows will be washed away. When we return to the true paradise, my daughter will be the mother of Garland.
Return things to how they were before.
Kaufman!
Did I ask for this? Nobody uses me. You won't get away with this.
Your role is over. We don't need you anymore. What do you think you could accomplish by coming here?
My, aren't we getting cocky? Bet you can't see this.
A glove it is! I thought I got rid of that!
had to do was plant it somewhere for you to find. You all, well, it kept you busy. Ha! You're easy. And there's more where this came from.
Stop it!
Huh? What the?
Our final boss, a demon. While we can make the argument of fighting demonic-like enemies throughout the game, this one seems different. Sprouting wings, a goat-like head alongside breast, and its spine showing. I think it still comes across as otherworldly in-game, but this image of it seen here is so good. This boss hits really hard, but a bit disappointed you can just sit there and tank it due to all the health items you find in-game. We give the Incubus a final shot and get our final scenes. Harry, Sybil, and the newly born baby disappear into the fog as credits begin to roll. We do get one final CG scene of Harry and Sybil looking at the baby and a call to the scene we saw from earlier, but before we go any further into this video, I want to talk about the game itself. Silent Hill is such a masterful game and experience, but I was surprised by a few things this time around, like how straightforward the game is. It's really easy to navigate where to go, and once inside locations, it's really hard to get lost. Silent Hill isn't a hard game by any means. By certain points of the game, you have an insane amount of healing items and ammo, making sure you can survive most encounters. A lot of enemies are easily dealt with, and the more annoying ones you can easily run past. Locations are pretty hard to get lost in, and with your inventory basically being infinite, it makes item management not a thing. When typically in survival horror you're asked what's more important, more ammo, health, key items, here the game is more focused on letting you explore the world that is Silent Hill. The creepy atmosphere, these dreamlike areas making you question things, and the very cryptic story. You're more focused on what's going on in the story than whatever is in front of you. Every cutscene you get is like a new nugget of information you can pull from. But even when you think you may have the story figured out, it adds more and more. It's a spiraling staircase, a rabbit hole, if you will. And while gameplay isn't the tightest, I don't think it's that bad, or shows its age comparatively to other titles within the genre. The camera can be a bit wonky at times, but for the most part, it tends to fix itself pretty quickly. And playing this back in the day on an old CRT TV was probably an experience in itself. However, when you finish the game for the first time, there's just one thing you can't help but think. What the fuck? On March 21st, 2001, a few months before the release of Silent Hill 2, Japan got the exclusive release of play novel Silent Hill. The first game in the series to not be developed by Team Silent. Suck on that, Homecoming. Don't worry, when the time is right, we'll talk about Team Silent. As the title of the game suggests, this is a visual novel adaptation of Silent Hill, and oh boy, this one's weird. Don't get me wrong, Silent Hill is a weird-ass game, but it's a creepy kind of weird. The first game is modeled after Western horror novels. Small town, the main character is a writer, weird occult practices, and a girl with strange abilities. And while this all remains true in the main storyline of this adaptation, well... She's got a gun! A visual novel is an interesting choice of medium for Silent Hill, but I can see how it could work. Visual novels are all about stories with a few branching paths that lead to dozens of endings, and this is all true as well here. Except whether it was through the fan translation, which big shout out, or just the overall writing, I don't think the writer here gets Silent Hill or even cares. I mean... She's got a gun! It's like they were like, yeah, I'll do the good endings I suppose, throw a little bit of Kaufman in there, but then can I get weird? You also lose the subtlety of the story the game provides. You have to remember on your first time through Silent Hill 1, you're probably really confused. And even by the end, depending on which one you get, either mad or just more confused. Those small nuances of the game are lost here, and instead kind of shoved in your face. The Grey Children or Mumblers are very easy to associate as Alyssa's schoolmates, but they hammer home childlike here to really get that point across. You have the game immediately tying Kaufman to the drug ring, enemies being mentioned as burned or charred. Subtlety is not the game's forte. However, I do think there is one aspect here that tops the original Silent Hill, and it's the psychological toll everything is taking on Harry. It's shown a little during the big back and forth sequence at the antique shop, but you really feel for Harry in this version of the game. It trades the dreamlike elements of the PS1 version for a more psychological thriller, which is pretty funny all things considered. What else are some big changes? Well, for starters, Lisa dies via staircase. There are some nice details here, like more information on Alyssa's plan, the description of the smell of the other world. When the game is heavily focused on actual Silent Hill things, it's not the worst companion piece. I still want to take anything here as canon besides the overall plot points, but it is a fun novelty to explore, pun intended. But we're going to go into a lot of detail of the actual plot of Silent Hill, so let's have some fun first. Bring on the alternate endings. You have your A and B endings, which just resemble the original's good and good plus ending. The C endings are where things get a bit different. Here, Harry teams up with Lisa and both venture down into the basement. Why? Well, because Kaufman isn't a name Lisa has heard for years because he's been dead. Harry is perplexed at this because he just met Kaufman a little while ago. Lisa delves more into Kaufman, stating he was extremely religious and set himself on fire, leaving his body charred. The two end up deeper in the basement and find the mark of Samael, and Harry mentions Alessa, which triggers Lisa into this blind rage. It's interesting because this ending paints Lisa as a cult member, and it isn't the only one to do it. She mentioned being obedient to the scripture and proclaims there being no God, only ugly humans, and lumps Harry together with them. Lisa is having a full-on mental breakdown, but then Lisa becomes scared, seeing something behind Harry, and when Harry turns around, nothing. His flashlight breaks down and something is eating. Whether Lisa transformed or got eaten by a mutated Kaufman is left up to your interpretation or imagination. Harry runs down a pitch black corridor and ends up at a door. This is your breakpoint for the two endings. If we let ourselves succumb to the feeling and go with the flow, Harry is burned alive. Whether for ritualistic sacrifice or Alyssa winning, we never know. The second ending has us open the door and get hit by a car. The guide for this ending mentions a bit more than what I got. I don't know if there was an after credit scene or whatnot, but this ending here is our first time loop ending. There's a few more like this. I don't know if this is an in-game suggestion, as in there's more story to discover, or just the writer wanting to have fun. What I do think though is that making Lisa a member of the cult does her character injustice. And you know, maybe she is, but I just never got that feeling from her in-game. Even when you see her have that psychotic twitch, everything with her felt more sad and lost than evil cult member. The next branch of endings ties more into the time loop thing going on. Everything plays out normally up into the lighthouse. Here you chase after Alyssa, go back to the boat, do your Sybil stuff, and before you would go into nowhere, Harry decides to take a break. Because you know, Harry is a writer and he's writing about his experience 7 years ago. He just doesn't remember fully what happened and thinks the ending with Sybil is a solid place to stop. How does this make sense? Since Cheryl looks to be about 7 still, is she just 7 forever? I don't know. These endings try to tie into a time loop, but it just doesn't work neatly. During the school section, you can call your house phone, and here you hear somebody on the other line. This is technically where this ending scene takes place. You just get a choice of who picks up, Cheryl or Harry. Having Cheryl pick up, she hears Harry on the other side, where he promises to take her to the amusement park after they stop by in Silent Hill. Having Harry pick up the phone results in Harry having a flashback to the events in Silent Hill and needs to help somebody at a lighthouse, so they rush off to Silent Hill. Then we can assume he drives off, accident, rinse, and repeat. The next endings are by far the worst endings. It begins in the antique shop where instead of Harry checking out the other church first, Sybil does so. Harry instead takes a little nap and then wakes up to find Sybil dead. The game plays out as normal, with the whole back and forth between hospital and antique shop before finally ending at the hospital. Here, Kaufman shows up and everyone decides to catch up on some rest. Harry goes to find some heaters and hears gunshots in the distance. He'll find Lisa dead, and then Kaufman, before finally stumbling across Cheryl with a handgun. Your two options lead to your two endings. If you ask Cheryl to kill you, Dolly shows up and tells you you did all of this. Flashbacks play, and we see Harry kill Sybil, Lisa, and Kaufman, before finally taking himself out. Finally free of everything before, we get a scene of Harry at his desk, basically saying he did this at his home. Nice. If you take the gun from Cheryl, Cheryl is shown to have done all of the killings except before she can kill Harry, Sybil steps in, taking out Cheryl, and revealing it was actually Dahlia, and Sybil has Cheryl somewhere safe, but Sybil seems different. Don't worry, this will never be resolved as the game ends here. While I do think this aspect of the game is weird, it's not the weirdest thing here. That would be him. Don't know who he is? Well, apparently he snuck into Harry's truck because he has a crush on Cheryl and is in Silent Hill 2. Apparently he was part of some DLC for the game, but due to time, it's basically been lost. What hasn't been though is Sybil's story. Once you get any of Harry's endings, you unlock Sybil's side of the story. If Harry's version was some wild what-if scenarios, then Sybil's is really bad fanfiction. It begins pretty normally. Sybil's having a conversation with someone from Silent Hill when it's abruptly cut off. She can't get back in contact and finds it weird, then taking it upon herself to investigate the situation. On her way there, she runs into Harry and gets a bit drowsy before dodging Ghost Alyssa. This part really bothered me, because Alyssa doing this to Harry makes sense. Alyssa has obvious connections there. Doing it to Sybil though, doesn't really add up, but it gets worse. Sybil winds up in the streets and finds the cafe. Both scenarios really make it a point that Harry was at the cafe first. Things play out normally and Sybil heads off. Here, things maintain continuity, at least for a little while. Sybil checks out the roads and notices the lack of streets, and while this next part can happen, it just doesn't make sense. Sybil then ends up at the police station. So she crosses the bridge, but the bridge is down unless Dolly went and brought the bridge up after. Whatever. Sybil then gets a phone call to go to the school by Cheryl, where she then runs into Cheryl, not Alyssa, actually Cheryl. At this point in the playthrough, I threw this whole game out for any kind of canon or research purposes and was too deep into playing it to just scrap the footage, so if I'm gonna go through it, so are you. Not actually, there's timestamps. So, the entire rest of Sybil's story revolves around her interaction with Cheryl. The church still rings and they go there. Again, this entire interaction wouldn't make sense. Dahlia just tells her, yeah, that girl is bad news, and lets them on their way, defeating the entire purpose of Dahlia's character. Her entire goal is Alessa/Cheryl. So to let them just walk out feels like they missed the point of this character. And it's not as if things still don't pan out normally, but it instead makes Alessa evil in the majority of these endings, which I can't stand. However, Sybil's story doesn't even cover Sybil's story. It's like an abridged version. Sybil and Alessa wind up at some dam or something where they spot a kid drowning. They eventually help, but when Sybil checks out who she saved and looks up, she sees Alessa. And granted, this was pretty creepy, but then we immediately jump to the end. We don't see the merry-go-round fight or the antique shop. Nope, it's just straight to the ending as we watch Harry leave. Sybil grabs Alessa and runs up some stairs as a metaphor to getting to heaven or something. That is your A ending. Your B ending takes you to the hospital with Harry. Dahlia tells them both girls, her daughter, and Harry are there, and they need to go fast. We do the absolute worst puzzle in the franchise, and then Harry gets hit with a lightning strike.
Lightning strike!
Yes, Alessa is portrayed as evil in one of these endings. You can go two ways. One, you can go through the door and find Alessa with Dahlia. Sybil, I believe, shoots Dahlia, but then we wake up back at the cafe. Sybil's bike is also here, but she decides to chase after Cheryl with the fog engulfing her forever. The other ending has Sybil being hit with a beam of light.
Lightning strike!
And bam, dead. She's at her own funeral where she spots a woman in a white dress. She approaches her, and the game ends. In the next ending, instead of chasing Alessa down into the basement, she instead strangles her, where Alessa just says she was trying to help. Sybil feels her conscience starting to fade, and the game ends. In this scenario, I do like that Harry and Sybil team up, but I just really dislike when they make Alessa out to be the bad guy. It's different in the PS1 version because we can clearly tell that's not the case, but here, it's all over the place depending on which ending you decide to go after. The C endings, well, C1 ending, is actually kind of a banger. Let's talk about the bad one first though. This route begins with Sybil and Cheryl on the bench together. They're trying to stay warm, but Sybil notices something, as if she's being absorbed by Cheryl and begins to feel what Cheryl, or in this case, Alessa feels. Her body feeling as if it's on fire, an evil building inside of her, and then suddenly seeing Harry. But she's not in control of her actions. It's the fight on the merry-go-round with insight from Sybil. It's a pretty solid scene. Then Sybil arrives at another door. We get two choices, either we run inside or question if we could. If we hesitate, Sybil dies here, her body engulfed in flames, and is found outside of her town in a forest, resembling what I could only assume Alessa's body would look like, and the game ends. Now C1? Instead of hesitating, we rush through. Sybil succumbs to her wounds and falls, but not before she watches Harry leave with a baby in hand. Except, Sybil thinks it's wrong. He shouldn't leave with it. It'll just create a never-ending cycle and refers to the baby as a demon. She gets lost in the darkness, and it's our final ending. Apparently, there's variants to these endings, but I'm not doing that. I like this ending as a bit of added context to the good ending, as well as kind of hinting at Silent Hill 3, probably the best thing about this game. There isn't much here we can pull out and tie to our speculation about Silent Hill, but you know where we can. On March 30th, 1999, Konami released an official guidebook that included a Q&A about the story of Silent Hill. This Q&A will be our foundation, treating every answer here as facts and build our speculation on. Most of what I'm going to say is how I interpret the answer. I could be wrong in my interpretation, but I'll leave the answer up in the left-hand corner as we go over relevant footage in the background. But before that, a quick shout out to Silent Hill Memories, a very important fan site that has a host of information, trivia, and guides on about every single Silent Hill game. So if you find yourself wanting to get lost down a rabbit hole, this is the perfect place to start. Alongside that, you have the translator behind both this and Lost Memories, Wall of Death, with their own site I believe being SilentHillChronicle.net. Both are great places to gather information and analysis on the games. With that said, let's begin at question 1, the outline of the town of Silent Hill. This just seems to be answered in the same way Lisa talks about the town. Silent Hill is an old town. It began down this path of modernization and tourism really bringing in people specifically around the lakeside area. This brought with it two things: resentment from the older townsfolk, and darkness in the shape of drug trafficking. However, the drug stuff is more of a veil than it is the actual darkness, because in that lies the true sinister side of the town, the cult aspect. And with that, the folklore of Silent Hill is built. What happened to the people who lived in Silent Hill? This answer is left up to the player's interpretation. Whatever you decide can be the right answer, but they do go on to say what the more likelier reason is. The world we are in is the world of Alessa's nightmare, and this does make plenty of sense. Question 3 feels like an extension to 2, asking about why there is no contact with the outside world. They don't really give an answer here, and it feels like a continuation of the second question's answer, or basically whatever you want to believe. It could be another dimension, someone's dream, it could be that the real world is only a leap away, but they do go on to say that reality and unreality is indistinct, and that much is a fact. I think this part is best showcased in the antique shop. It's hard to tell what's real or isn't. There's this constant cycle between the other world and fog world that happens almost instantly. We were with Lisa one moment and then somewhere else another. Where did the monsters come from? I love this answer because I feel like there's sometimes a wrong assumption that everything here is something Alessa feared. While a majority of things are, as we can see described as such in the Lost Memories creature commentary for the first game, there are things she was also fascinated with, or perhaps liked to some degree. Like the flying creatures coming from her favorite book, or the moth perhaps being her favorite insect, or something she just found fascinating. But this sentence here is where this really seals the deal for me. Her trivial things that looked strange to her as a child became reality, along with the objects of her fears. This to me indicates not everything here is a fear, but instead things she found strange and interesting as any young child would. Everything in her nightmare stems from memories due to stress and pressure, likely at the hands of Dahlia's spell and whatever she put inside her. Why does the town suddenly become dark? This one is a bit harder to break down. They describe the world we're playing in as not being reality, and that both of these landscapes are Alessa's dreams or nightmares. It's just that one could be described as being asleep, referring to the reverse side being that sleep state, while the fog world or light sections being the more awake side of things, but itself still being a dream. They make mention of REM, which stands for rapid eye movement. It's stages of a sleep cycle to which there are 4. It begins with non-REM sleep and ends with REM. After that, you begin the cycle again. You begin with the first stage of non-REM, cycle between stages 2 and 3, and finally end in the deep sleep stage of REM. Then repeat these cycles in an 8-hour time frame or however long you sleep. To make it a bit more easier, the first 2 cycles are much more on the lighter sleep of things. Think of this as preparing to take off, while the third stage is where rest comes into play. Your body begins to repair itself, and this is where you get the feeling of rest coming from. Not having enough of this stage is why you sometimes wake up and feel like you need more sleep. Then we enter the REM stage. This is your dream stage, and it doesn't tend to last too long. I think this is why sometimes we wake up in the middle of a good dream, and like it's right at the very end. Now, what does this mean in Silent Hill terms? Well, the REM stage is where nightmares happen, so we can tie this to when we enter the other world. We have specific moments when things turn dark, and we see it happen in real time only twice. Once when we're chasing Cheryl down, and then again when we use the 3 keys. We do have a few more times that the world is noticeably dark, that being when we wake up in the antique shop and on our way to the lakeside. However, in the antique shop when we wake up, it's the nightmare version of the world, where every other time the night version tends to be the fog world. We also only see the world transition to the nightmare version twice, that being in the very beginning of the game and on our way to the pier. If we were to assign these as stages, well, the right side, while being bright and foggy, would be non-REM stages 1 and 2, while when it gets darker, it would be stage 3, and the other world would be REM. This REM stage, like I said, is where nightmares can also happen, and this is where the deity comes into play. Deity, whatever. Everything in her nightmare has jumped to a 10. The hellish landscape resembling Alessa's burned body, her hatred, it's twisting and amplifying things so it can be nurtured. Again, I want to point out this doesn't make Alessa evil. Everyone has a dislike of things, whether out of fear, disgust, or things you just don't like. This feeling of dislike is taken to hate by the deity inside of her, in the same way things can be taken from like to love. The argument I want to make here is that if Alessa is doing all of this, it's only to certain people. Remember, the only people pulled into this world are people who have connections to the cult, Kaufman and Dahlia. Lisa is only in the nightmare world, and we'll talk about that later. Sybil and Harry are just unlucky. Sybil is more, Wrong place, wrong time, and as for Harry, we'll talk more about him and his connection to Cheryl once we get a bit deeper into the answers. What were Dahlia's intentions? This answer is pretty simple, and Dahlia herself states her intentions at the end of the game. However, this answer works more as a background on Dahlia as a whole. By the end of the game, we knew she was a part of the cult, we just didn't know in what capacity. Here we can see that she was a spirit medium, and that Dahlia's wish or intention at the end of the game is the goal of the overall cult. Everyone who's a part of this cult has the same dream or motivation. There are two more interesting bits of information here. One, this cult isn't based on any real world connections. On top of that, this cult has been doing things for a long time. There may be some aspects borrowed from the real world, but as a whole, the cult is its own unique thing. As for the ritual involving Alessa, it seems that young girls tend to go missing in Silent Hill, but they also include the answer of it being a small town, and young people wanting more in life than just their hometown, adding more to the spooky folklore. What was the cause of the fire that broke out 7 years ago? Very interesting to see that Dahlia assumed Alessa would be the new spiritual medium for the cult when the time was right. This falls into that whole parent thing of closest kin taking over their position after they're either dead or retired, and makes the cult seem way more company-like, which we do get some details about later on in this Q&A. Also interesting to point out the location of said ritual. Not Alessa's, but the fact that the cult already has a place to do the rituals at. Could it be the back of the antique shop? Who knows, there isn't really any clarification, but we do get a description of Dahlia being impulsive. The fire itself is just something that grew out of hand. The ritual required fire, but they don't say the target is required to be on fire. However, we do have two instances of said fires in game. The first being the body tied up in the lizard's boss room. There's a fire underneath, but it never wraps around the body. In fact, the fire dies out once you beat the boss. And if we were to associate this in the memory of Alessa seeing said sacrifice, it could mean the victim is never set on fire. Then we have the fire blazing at the other church. But this could be in reference to the day of Alessa's ritual. As we'll find out later, this altar was a copy of the one at Dahlia's house. Real quick, this is post-editing, like script chase here talking. I mentioned two fires, right? And while that part is correct, there is actually a couple more places where fire is important. You have the fire in the hospital when you are burning the vines away, which is like pretty like on the nose and really important. And then you also have the fire at the end of the game. Again, this is after the big fights and everything's kind of going to hell, pun intended. And you have fire just raining all over the arena. You have Cheryl kind of looking up, or my bad, Alessa looking up. And these are very important too, because like fire is very important in this game, obviously. Gonna let it go back to recorded chase and not real chase. Enjoy. Did Alessa die in the fire 7 years ago? This is just confirming things we already knew, but it's nice to have clarification. We get Kaufman's involvement confirmed. Basically, he ran the hospital and forged Alessa's death, or autopsy. Alessa split her soul, but we don't know when. I don't think it was after. It makes more sense to be either during the ritual or right before, since if she was whole, the ritual would have worked, right? Then we get the reason why Alessa is alive. I think in game you kind of think it's Dahlia's doing, but here we get confirmation that the deity is protecting her body. Dahlia is just the one inflicting pain in order to bring the other half back, and for a whole 7 years, Alessa endured. This part here confused me a bit. They mention corpses wrapped in robes can be seen in places that lead to the other world. However, I can't really recall off the top of my head bodies near places that lead to the other world. Like when you transition to the other school, it's just bottles of pills. Same at the hospital, you just kind of enter the other world. You do find bodies in those locations, so I wonder if that's what they meant. There's a bunch of tied up bodies in the school, and I think a few in the hospital, and of course, the very first one you're introduced to, but I don't know. This one kind of left me confused. Did Cheryl know that she was Alessa's other self? This answer lets us interpret a few things. Mainly that Cheryl, while still being Alessa, was her own person as well. The reason I say this is because they answer by saying Alessa endured for the happiness of her other self. It's not happiness she was able to directly have, but vicariously. At least that's the way it sounds. As we know, Alessa and Cheryl do become one by the end of the game, so at some point they merge together. When did Cheryl and Alessa unite? This answer is huge, mostly because we get another instance of the beginning part of the game being described as Harry's dream. In another interview, the director, Kichiro Toyama, states that Harry didn't die in the beginning and it was all his dream. Here we get the reasoning for why he sees the other world. Alessa's nightmare bled into his at this very moment, and I think this is the connection. This is why Harry is the only one who visits the other world. He asks Sybil and she doesn't have a clue of what he's talking about. And the only person we met in the other world is a frightened Lisa. I had a whole big theory about this moment here when you're chasing Cheryl is the last time we see Cheryl as Cheryl and she becomes possessed, and this note is technically to Cheryl and not us, but that quickly gets dismissed with the sentence here. This does add an interesting thought though. If Alessa's nightmare can be enroached by Harry, can the same be said for Harry's nightmare? Which I think is a yes. When Cheryl calls Harry at the school, I don't think this is Alessa playing a trick on Harry, but instead Harry's own nightmare of his daughter missing bleeding into Alessa's nightmare. His nightmare once again shows up in the shopping center. Seeing Cheryl alongside Alessa on the TV screen, remember, it's two girls that he doesn't really know what's going on with. It's his daughter, it's Alessa, and he's just confused. So I think this is portrayed on the TV screen. The constant flickering, the symbols, and the symbols, they mean something. We'll get into that in a bit, but it's just, just how I see it. This is after the long back and forth sequences of waking up. It's also the only time we see the scene of Cheryl looking in distress. But from the information we know, Cheryl by this point is merged with Alessa and is probably fine. Real quick, I'm back again. It's me, Chase from the editing room. So I say this is the only time we see Cheryl kind of in this scene that's like, uncomfortable. And it is true in game, but you do see the scene one more time or before you even start playing in the intro cutscene. It's like very faint and you can barely see it kind of, but I should be playing footage. And you see it here. So this is technically true and also technically not true. Also, in case you're wondering why I sound like a little bit more clear here or, not as nasally or congested, is because I was a little sick when I was recording this, so sorry in advance if I sound a little off. If that's the case, then I think this could only be an aspect of Harry's nightmare. We get some more confirmation on Alessa and Cheryl's merging, that she was free from the spell, the bindings, and her burns, being reborn in Cheryl, but it makes mention of Alessa's actual age, which is 14, and that the child version is just a phantom. I think this means that this older Alessa is the actual one running around, although in the shape of the child. I don't know, I got a bit lost at this part, but I love this part. Alessa, now freed, also has a manifestation of psychic powers, which we see firsthand. However, there is a clarification that under normal circumstances, Alessa wouldn't have had these powers, and even goes on to say that Alessa before the ritual had more of a sixth sense than supernatural powers. So as a kid, she wasn't 11 or something, she just had hunches or premonitions. Then we get the reasoning for why she has powers. Maybe. After all, the answer is more of a question, saying it could be due to the deity inside of her. What is the mark of Samael and what is the seal of Metatron? We'll do these questions together since they kind of go hand in hand since they both stand for the same thing. But the mark of Samael is just fake news. Dahlia wanted to use a phrase that sounds scary to make Harry take action and play into her hand. Just the first few sentences to the answer as to what the seal of Metatron is gives us so much. Alessa wished for death. That is what she wants. Which I think can be seen in the opening scene with her stepping in front of the car. I think this is more symbolism than anything since Alessa can't die from normal means. It's why she's placing the seal all around town. Once Alessa and Cheryl combined, two things became a reality. One, Alessa was free from the cult spell, but also the deity was now maturing. This is why Alessa's running all over town, and once again, we get to see just how smart Dahlia can be. Whether she knew Harry was entering the other world or not is left up to our interpretation, but I think the safer bet is that Alessa would hesitate when she saw Harry. Dahlia knew this and entrusted the Phleros to him. We also get to see Dahlia realize Alessa's plan with this context. When she says there's only two left, she realizes all of Alessa's markings are making one big mark on the map, and it's why she's able to pinpoint Alessa's two last locations, the lighthouse and the amusement park. The characters in Silent Hill are just so good. We'll talk about Dahlia later, but she isn't just some crazy lady. Like, she might be, but there's just so much depth there. I think this can also tie into the whole reality and unreality thing. The other world is basically the same as the regular side minus the whole nightmare aspect, but these work like layers. It's there, but it also isn't there. With this being Alessa's dream, she's sacrificing it in order to annihilate herself, and the choice of words annihilate is very strong. It could have easily been said as killed, but to be killed, you would still have remains, and annihilate would mean nothing left. Who constructed the other church and its purpose? They mention this church being a reproduction. Funny to use that word considering the themes of birth in this game. But they say the antique shop and by extension this church were the closest to the reverse side or other world. Again, I think it's safe to assume this is where the rituals would have normally taken place. Then they cite the reason why we see another altar or church in Nowhere is because Alyssa retained the memory of praying there when she was younger. It's a bit difficult because I want to say this could mean Nowhere is in Alyssa's head, but her dreams are all born from memories, and dreams also stem from the brain, which is in your head, so it just feels like it's all connected and doesn't matter which way you look at it because it's all the same shit. What sort of partnership did Dahlia and Kaufman have? Just some more confirmation about each of their respective roles. It's nice to have, and you don't have to go guessing things. Kaufman was the one trafficking it, sending it to locations, and Dahlia would make the drug, while Claudia, Raw, was used... I don't know why I said it like that. White Claudia was used for the cult, but the mixture of PTV was sent to Kaufman. After the fire, Kaufman would help out Dahlia and keep Alyssa down in the secret basement, probably for more of the share on the drug business. This stretches on though, because we do get more of Kaufman's personality revealed. He cares deeply about money and power. He saw the magical deaths of both the mayor and the narcotics officer, and wanted some of that power for himself. Then of course there's more of that folklore tease, like maybe the cult... Okay, my bad. Secret society was responsible for the deaths of the development group. Question 15 isn't really important. It's just asking about Norman Young, who doesn't really have anything to do with the overall plot of Silent Hill, aside from being someone who helped Kaufman smuggle drugs. What can the Flaros do? Basically, the Flaros is named after a demon and refers to someone who possesses faculties as an antagonist. The phrasing faculties really threw me off. I was confused reading this, but it seems to be another way to say senses. With that in mind, it makes a bit more sense. It refers to a demon who would possess someone's senses antagonistically, and we can kind of see that in game when we use it. It's this blinding light that shoots through somebody, but not physically at least, leaving them in a weakened state. Alessa seems more dazed than she is injured, and this was Dahlia's big trump card. Dahlia is a lot smarter than I think most would assume. She played her cards right, and basically succeeded for the most part. In fact, if it wasn't for Kaufman, she would have won. Speaking of that, what is a Gleophotis? Okay, the first half of this answer is pretty dense. Basically, in order to make things a bit more easier to digest, they took terminology from other real religions as a means of convenience, but it doesn't mean what it does there. So for instance, this word would mean amulet in certain religions, and here it means to impede or stop their deity. Then we get at least one aspect of the canon ending, the acknowledgement of Kaufman's involvement. In the same PSM interview from earlier, the decision on a canon ending is left up in the air, and Silent Hill 1 didn't have a definitive ending until the release of Silent Hill 3. All of the endings within the context of just Silent Hill 1 were valid until then. The canon ending is the good ending. More on that in a second, but that's the end of the Q&A. The Book of Lost Memories was a part of the guide to Silent Hill 3, that when you flipped over contained a lot of information on Silent Hill 1, 2, and 3. I was originally going to go over this in the Silent Hill 3 video, but a lot of this stuff is super basic and we'll just use the relevant information to Silent Hill 1. Sorry, James.
Next time, baby.
Like I said, a lot of the stuff here for Silent Hill 1 is pretty basic. There's some fun information on characters, but we'll be using it mostly for the creature commentary. The first two enemies we encounter, the Air Screamer and Groaner, are modeled after birds and dogs. The Air Screamer gets its likeness from one of Alessa's favorite books, The Lost World by Conan Doyle. When looking over the Wikipedia page, they do have two images of petrodactyls included, which our enemy is modeled after. I think the biggest difference between the two is ours and enemies in this game in general have a more fleshy look, and in some instances that of a burn victim, which checks out with Alessa's situation. I think it's also interesting to know how the head of the Air Screamer resembles something more lizard-like or even dog-like. Speaking of dogs, the Groaner is based on Alessa's dislike of dogs. Now, in the game we don't have many interactions with the real-life counterparts, but there are two big key moments. The first is the big sign saying beware of dog. There isn't much we can infer from this area other than it being somewhere that Alessa may have been around often. Perhaps a route to school, somewhere Dahlia and her walked by, it's really hard to say. The next one is pretty simple though. In Nowhere we have a birdcage key alongside a key inside, the Pele key. And it's fitting that this key brings us to the final corridor of the game alongside both of Alessa's rooms. We can easily see this key as Alessa if we wanted to get a bit abstract, especially with the whole bird wings flapping in here. A caged bird wanting to be free, and when applied to Alessa it means death, which we do grant. The next set of enemies are more humanoid and are all based off of Alessa's dislike of people. The Mumblers, or Grey Children, represent the kids at school who would bully her, although the book describes Mumblers as menacing animals or small demons from Fairytales. Though I think this part was mostly changed due to ratings. 100% great children are supposed to represent the kids.
Fuck them kids. Fuck the kids? Yeah.
Puppet nurses and doctors are fascinating creature designs, at least within the context of symbolism in this game. There's a couple of ways to look at them, such as Alyssa disliking the hospital or disliking the staff due to her mother and Kaufman. After all, it's in the name. Puppet. Lisa tells Harry no one is allowed near the secret basement, and this could manifest in Alyssa's hatred towards them. The puppet enemies also introduce a very interesting element to Silent Hill that's only seen in this game, and it's the parasite aspect. These things are clearly running around. For some reason, I was always under the impression this was Dahlia's doing, but there isn't a lot of evidence towards that. In fact, the only evidence we have is that she did this to Alessa. But this had to be a traumatizing experience for Alessa, and as we know, a lot of what's shown in the other world is stemmed from memories. So are these parasitic enemies a similar thing to what she has inside her, with the exception of everyone else being a wrong host? I mean, clearly, there's a flesh being popping from their back. Another thing that makes this interesting is Alessa and Sybil. Alessa has a fascination with caterpillars and moths. Now, the way a butterfly comes out of its chrysalis isn't exactly a one-to-one, but it is very similar, especially in the case of the incubus, and when looked at it from this angle, I think it makes sense. The parasitic enemies infects its hosts and tries to emerge as something new, or in this case, as God. But in the puppet nurses and Sybil, it can't. It can only take over the host. I know there's another theory revolving around these all being real staff brought in, but I couldn't find anything about that, at least within the official sources. Then we have rompers, which, scariest thing in the game by the way. I hate the sounds they make, and the attack they do on you sure is something. These enemies are based off of Alessa's fear of adults, which makes plenty sense. Think of all the adults Alessa probably interacted with. Most of them had to be cult-based, and the few that weren't were more than likely teachers who either A, didn't know of Alessa's bullying, or B, knew and just didn't care. Then we go into our more insect-based enemies: Giant Roach, Bloodsucker, and Hang Scratcher. It's a fucking bug. Hang Scratcher is a mixture of different insects, and it makes it more interesting than that other one for sure. Both of these things just stem from Alessa's dislike of insects. The Bloodsucker, though, is very interesting. It's described as both worms and snakes, but the interesting thing about this is its location. It's only at the hospital and doesn't really do anything to you until you get in its way. It requires a blood pack to distract it. I think the obvious way to see this monster is as the cult/Dahlia, representing the need of Alessa and draining her of her resources for their own gain. We'll save the two bosses for after and instead look at the two final bosses. Both of these are referred to as mental images, one of Dahlia's god and Alessa. From the description of the metaphor, I think it's easy to read this as Alessa doing what her mother wishes, whether out of love or just being compelled. This isn't what Alessa sees, but rather Dahlia. They also refer to this as Dream Demon. Are we to take this as not the real demon, but more so a manifestation? The incubator is so interesting to talk about. I realize I'm saying interesting a lot, but I'm sorry. The book refers to this as Alessa's mental image projected. Does this mean Alessa as she wishes to see herself, as she sees herself now? Since, as we know, Alessa herself probably went through a transformation, gained supernatural powers, and the like. It also refers to Alessa fusing with God. Yet, Dahlia's dialogue still refers to this entity as a god, but when the god she envisions is born, she immediately gets on her knees to worship instead of acknowledging with words. Just a small detail that stands out. Real quick, I want to make another clarification. I say that she's on her knees praying to this deity, and while it looks like that symbolically, I think it's not literal, because in this scene, Dahlia just got shot by Kaufman, so like this technically isn't true. These last two enemies I think are very important, or at least can be seen as such. Splithead, aka Lizard, is, well, a lizard. He's from the book that we found at the school. Alessa read it at some point, and clearly it stuck with her. The book doesn't make mention if she feared it or was just fascinated with it. Same with the moth enemy, Float Stinger. So what is it about these two enemies that make it interesting? Well, let's talk about dreams. Now this part is going to be a little out there. When it comes to defining dreams, it can be tricky. Do dreams have meanings? Sure. But I also think dreams can be just that, dreams. So when you have things dedicated to defining dreams, I feel at times it can be a bit anecdotal. Like a fortune cookie, if you will. Easy to apply a vague quote to some aspect of your life. Oh, you'll be receiving money, and your mom gives you $5 she owed you for coffee yesterday or something. Find a penny between the seats of your car, and technically the cookie would be true. It's one of those things that I recommend taking with a grain of salt, but nonetheless make for an interesting conversation. We're not going to sit here defining every aspect of Alessa's dream to a dream definition, but I do think the lizard and moth make for an interesting topic. It seems to be in general, dreaming about insects can be seen as negative thoughts, feeling insignificant, or as some sort of sickness, which can easily be applied to Alessa's situation. When we see Alessa in the attic, we also see a bunch of negative phrases alongside her. She clearly isn't in the healthiest of headspaces, and can we blame her? Dream definitions tend to have a positive association and a negative one. While I stand by manifestations of Alessa's dream aren't all negative, I also don't think the things we're looking at specifically here have any positive association. Well, maybe. The dream definition of lizards has quite a bit to unpack. Lizards can be a stand-in for a snake, but not in the sense of reptilian, but more so in the way of modern-day slang. Dreaming about them can be seen as someone able to change their color and blend into the background, creating a hidden problem. We can easily assign this to Dahlia, cold-blooded, someone who hides behind the mother facade in order to use Alessa. We also see it can be interpreted as primitive instincts or unconscious behaviors, which also fits the bill. Not necessarily in regards to Alessa, but to the deity inside of her bringing such thoughts to the forefront. Killing a lizard in your dream can be seen as ending a phase in your life or inability to regrow. This is a toss-up. On one hand, we can apply the ending phase being the torturous nightmare, but Alessa wasn't the one who killed a lizard, at least directly. Harry did. And we could apply the inability to regrow or ending phase to Harry, but this isn't Harry's dream. With that said, it is interesting that this is the only boss fight where we see Alessa afterwards. Perhaps we can tie this moment to Cheryl and Alessa becoming one, and that being the ending phase, hence seeing Harry one last time. I'm not really sure. The moth, on the other hand, has a lot of connections we can interpret. Let's start with the psychic intuition. Here it says the moth can represent psychic abilities. This was shown off in the final act, but according to the Q&A, Alessa's original abilities were more akin to premonitions, which lines up with the third eye mentioned here. Trusting your guide/spirits. Again, we have a literal sense of this one. Alessa and Cheryl become one at some point in the story, and with that, Alessa can be seen as guiding herself to stop Dahlia's plans. Exploring the unknown. This one fits Cheryl more as she doesn't really know about her other self. She can hear that voice but doesn't quite understand it. Psychic transformation. Again, showed off. Ultrasound and vibrations. There are a couple of moments in the game where the ground shakes, but there is this pounding sound that always emits from underground. Feminine and moon. Doesn't have quite as much evidence to put towards except for this section here. The cocoon imagery or rebirth fits perfectly with Alessa, alongside the dormant abilities. Both of these things have a counterpart in-game and reflect the yin and yang as mentioned here. In terms of rebirth, we have two occasions when Alessa did this specifically in the stories it happens. When she reunited with Cheryl, and when she handed Harry a baby at the end. When she became Alessa again, she merged with Cheryl, who was in a way void of all negative things she experienced in her life. In a way, the good side of Alessa, while bedridden Alessa was enduring pain and having negativity brought up through the means of the deity, creating our first yin and yang. Then we have the baby again, void of everything negative, while Alessa merged with the deity inside of her, creating a god, giving us our second instance of yin and yang. When it comes to the dormant abilities, we know Alessa had a sixth sense and had abilities awakened by the deity inside her, who also has its own abilities that kept her alive. Then we get to the moth and the devouring mother. Here we have 6 things. 2 of these we've already talked about. One is a given due to Alessa's age, and the other I don't think really fits her. That leaves these 2. The mother complex can lead down its own little rabbit hole. I came across this article by Firth Luton, I hope I'm saying this correctly, and while I won't show it, there is this part at the end we can apply to Alessa, Dahlia, and by extension, Harry. There is a collective image of nourishment and security on the one hand, the positive mother, and devouring possessiveness on the other, the negative mother. Harry's main character trait throughout any piece of media is his undying love for Cheryl, and with his wife gone, takes the role of both father and mother, which creates this foil to Dahlia. Both love their children, but where Harry wants to protect and nourish Cheryl, Dahlia wants to control and use Alessa. Despite these things, Cheryl and Alessa both still have love for their parents. Alessa portraying the image of Dahlia's god, and Cheryl telling Harry thank you, although this is only in the bad ending. However, Alessa gives Harry another reincarnation of herself as her last sign of love, cause what is love if not trusting the man who loved you undyingly with your future? Self-destructive attraction or self-destructive behavior. In terms of moths, this is described as being attracted to the lights or to a flame, something that can cause harm despite looking attractive. If a moth flies into the flame, I think it probably isn't coming back from that. I think without needing to say it, you can see how this ties to Alessa. The Q&A says Alessa's ultimate goal is to annihilate herself, and while this isn't shown directly, it is painted in broad strokes over the game. Why would Alessa want this or be attracted to it? We kind of went over this in the Q&A, and it just boils down to peace. Alessa is at the mercy of the cult and does not want to bring some demonic god into the world, all she wanted was love. That's about it for the dream analysis portion. There's still a lot to cover, but for the meantime, let's return to the beginning of the game. The fear of blood creates fear for the flesh. What does this line really mean? There's a lot of interpretations for this. Some people tend to think it relates to family, with that being a central theme within the story. Also with the coined term flesh and blood, usually relating to your family. Some see it as trying to be deep and lost in translation, which I don't agree with. I mean, I'm sure there are some translation differences within this game, but I don't think this is one. I could be wrong though. Some take it as a more literal sense, in essence a domino effect. That is because you're so scared of bleeding or blood that you avoid outcomes in which you could be injured, and in a way create a new fear. Example, a fear of dogs because you could be bitten and thus bleed. I personally lean towards this interpretation. I think to simplify things, this line here is the entire core of the franchise, which is manifestation. When looking at this definition, we can see a lot of things that this can be applied to within this game. Something that manifests, an occult phenomenon, a public demonstration of power and purpose. I feel pretty confident about this one. And then we have scenes that only appear in this intro. The first of those scenes is what we can assume is Harry finding Cheryl. This is also the only time we see Harry's wife, and if you get the good plus ending, this scene is the same except Harry's wife is replaced with Sybil. Interesting choice we'll talk about later. A lot of these scenes are a mix of setting up the game's atmosphere with scenes we see in game, and some scenes that feel out of place or set up events prior to our arrival in Silent Hill. The out of place scenes of course belong to Alessa. The first is her waking up in her bed. This is the only time we see Alessa at her correct age. Well, kind of. I mean, we see the ghost apparitions of her, but are those her correct age or her real body? I mean, it's not her real body, right? It's the combination body of Alessa and Cheryl. Her actual body is at the end of the game when it's all like bandaged up, but we don't see her. So it's a bit complicated, but you know, yeah. On top of that, this doesn't fit anywhere on the timeline. Alessa was burned at the ritual and taken immediately to the hospital. It would be safe to assume at this point Alessa would be in her comatose state, yet she looks pretty active. Is this a phantom, a mental projection? I think this is more for player curiosity than anything, like, who is this girl? Is it the same girl we see at the beginning? If so, what happened to her? We also have a quick shot of a house. Again, safe to assume this is Dahlia's household, but this would have to be before the fire since we have confirmation of her house being burnt down. These are the only two odd scenes, and it could be that they wanted more scenes like this, but these CG scenes took a lot of time to render, and they could have just been like, let's roll with what we got. Then we have scenes that establish things before we get to Silent Hill. Firstly, Sybil on her phone. I believe she mentions trying to communicate with someone in Silent Hill, but that she wasn't getting any signal and found that odd, which leads her to investigating. Then we have Lisa and Kaufman, the only interaction these two have outside the ending. There's an argument to be made that Lisa was talking to Kaufman on the videotape, but it's never established as to who she's speaking to. We can only infer it to being Kaufman due to him running the hospital. Lisa looks very angry, clearly in arguments, and from what we know of Lisa and her story, the thing she's been arguing with the hospital over is Alessa. She doesn't want to be her caretaker anymore, and doesn't understand what's going on with that girl. Kaufman can be seen pulling Lisa back, and it's safe to assume he's the reason why she's stuck as Alessa's caretaker. Immediately after this scene, we have a scene of Lisa laughing, a completely different mood to what we just saw her in. Lisa is such a fascinating character in her overall place in the story. We'll come back to this scene. Our next scenes just show Sybil and Harry making their way to Silent Hill, but in between those scenes we have a scene with Dahlia. She's running away and then looking back. She's astonished. I'll mention this here, but in Lost Memories it mentions that Dahlia becomes aware of someone's presence. With the added context, I think it's fair to assume Dahlia is made aware of Cheryl's arrival in Silent Hill, thus beginning the game. The rest of the scenes are just context to Harry's crash. I want to take a look at locations next, but only the ones important or hold significance to Alessa. Places like the lighthouse or amusement park don't serve a connection to her. Those were only needed areas to mark so she can complete the seal. Instead, the three key locations in Alessa's life are the school, the hospital, and the antique shop. Nowhere technically isn't a location. As I've alluded to, I think it's the inner part of Alessa's mind. But with that said, let's take a quick detour back to our first house. In our first house, we get the mention of Eclipse, and earlier I said this stumped me. Well, I kind of lied to you. It didn't stump me so much as it didn't make sense. Even now, I feel like what I'm about to say should be taken with a grain of salt. The only reason I feel like this can work is because of the Q&A. Even without it, I still lean towards this meaning, but it just gave it more evidence, at least in my mind. We know Silent Hill had old religious roots, and while it isn't based on any real-world religion, some aspects or terms may be used, but with a different meaning. Well, way back in the day, from my understanding, Real-life religions would see eclipses as omens, signs of deaths, usually of someone important. I know what you're thinking, Alessa, cause I thought so too. However, after sitting on it for a while, I think this can mean someone else. Someone who can be argued as important to the cult due to what she offers. Dahlia. This fits a lot more for me. While Alessa is super important, being the one to birth the cult's deity, if Alessa were to fail, they would still find importance in Dahlia due to being the spiritual medium for the cult. And on top of that, it doesn't matter what you do in game, Dahlia is the first person to die, aside from Lisa, but that's a different topic. Again, I think this should be taken with a grain of salt, because this could just be seen in the literal sense of it turning night. As far as locations go, the school is pretty bare without the context we get in Nowhere. After we see Alessa's desk, it changes everything we see in this location from spooky atmosphere to downright sad. Safe to say, Alessa was heavily bullied. In the regular version of the school, we don't come across many items. Instead, we have weird occurrences, like a girl crying in the bathroom or a jump scare in a locker. It's easy to say the crying is some apparition of Alessa, or even perhaps Cheryl herself if you want to go for that extra reach. The cat in the locker is also pretty intriguing as it's the only real-world animal we see in the game. We also know, or can assume, Alessa had a love for cats, judging by the 2 cats on Cheryl's clothing. So is that cat Alessa's cat? We can only infer. This is the only interactable locker, and when we visit this place again in the Otherworld version, we can interact with it once more to find a bloody mess. In both instances, it's safe to assume the cat is killed. In the regular version, we have a single enemy encounter outside of this room, and have this sound play before we leave. It could be seen as the kids of the school going to the extreme to bully Alessa, but again, this is just one thought on the matter. Returning back to Alessa's desk, I want to draw attention to the word thief. We have zero information on why Alessa was bullied aside from this. It could be because of her premonitions. After all, we know Alessa seemed to have some sort of love for playing cards. Playing Go Fish and the other person just knowing what cards you had in your hand would be pretty annoying. But to imply thief means they think they stole something, or she stole something. If we remove the dark aspect of the cat and remind ourselves this is an elementary school, kids can get pretty upset about the simplest things, such as a red rubber ball. We only find 2 real big key items in this location, the card with the key on the back and the rubber ball. The ball would only make sense as to what she stole, especially since this is the nightmare version of the school, and as we know, it's where Alessa's memories tend to form. As for the card with the key on the back, I think this goes back to the painting in the office. From what we see in the antique shop and even some future titles, art in the town of Silent Hill can get a bit weird. We can draw all the conclusions we want. The school is part of the cult, the principal and staff were, it doesn't really matter. All that matters is if we want to take this painting as something that's actually in the school or not. Because if it is, this can easily circle back to Alessa's childlike wonderment, hence why this shows up in the other world. She could have been curious as to how a door like this would open, create her own ideas, and we know images can really stick with Alessa. After all, this guy. Real quick, I had to come back and add a few more things after working on some extra stuff for this video. In the normal version of the school, or fog version, the riddles here in retrospect hammer home this feeling of being stuck. You have the hand holding the medallion, stuck forever in this position without outside help. The birds without a voice, the feeling of being hopeless, and again, the mention of birds, which we know can clearly represent Alessa, time's door, just a lot of motifs of time, stuck, helpless, everything we later know Alessa felt. I like how I added this, and then I'm gonna add another part after the part that I added. I want to talk again real quick about time's door, because I think it's very interesting. Time's door is a very interesting thing to say, because it is the focal point of the school, right? Of the first side of the school. It is to open the door and get in there. For why does Harry want to get in there? I don't know, but that's the goal of the first part of the school. But the bigger question is, what does opening it mean? Because I think it does mean something, and I think what it means is it means time is now moving again. Because the whole point, or a lot of the focus of the school is a lot of stuff that's silent. It's a lot of things that are stuck, a lot of things that are not moving. And so by opening the door, we are now accelerating things, right? Because we enter the other world again. We are now moving things along. And Cheryl and Alessa, if we were to assume at this point become one, then it's safe to say that at this moment, this is where everything goes boom. We're going, right? Because if we refer back to the Q&A, we can clearly see the part where they talk about Alessa and Cheryl becoming one is also the moment or the trigger for the deity inside of her to also start maturing. And if this is the point, then this makes this, like, the school is so important, right? But this is more of important afterwards, with the context we know now, you know? I think this is about as much as we can pull from the school. Let's head over to the next big location. I might butcher this. Alchemelia Hospital. I think that's how you say it. The name itself is a bit weird. Alchemelia. Well, first, it kind of sounds like alchemy, which does show its head later on. Alchemelia's definition should be on screen by now. It's referred to as a family of herbs with the common name Lady's Mantle. This itself has some connections to alchemy, but we'll save that talk for later. The normal hospital doesn't have many items to go over, just the red liquid we pick up, which we now know is Aglaophotis, another kind of plant, at least in the real world. In real world uses, this plant has had its mentions in occultism, so plants, occults, and alchemy. Very interesting. Kind of hint at things to come. What makes the hospital interesting in retrospect is how we even get to the secret basement. In order to do so, we need to use a disinfectant and burn away some vines. But before that, and before we even get to the otherworld version of the hospital, we have a vision, or a dream of Alessa in front of the antique shop. Both places hold their secrets behind doors or bookcases. Both of these places are hidden and covered from the outside world, only certain people are aware of them. On top of that, both Alessa and the other church are the closest to the reverse side, making this quite an interesting parallel. Back to getting into the secret basement. It is quite interesting that we have to burn our way in. Fire, while being heavily mentioned in the game, is used very sparingly. This is made all the more interesting when we add the disinfectant. While being flammable, it is meant to clean wounds. And once we get access to the secret basement, we get a VHS that talks about Lisa and her desire to leave the hospital, alongside the key to meet Lisa in person, who took care of Alessa while bedridden, cleaning her wounds, changing her bandages, and in a way, something we just did. Arguably. Look, I'm going to be reaching the back half of this video, it is what it is. Again, I'm going to add here, the riddle in this location is another clear piece that points to Alessa's feelings. We have an overall kind of normal poem, except with the mention of / wrist, which can easily be tied to a certain action with a certain intention, which we know Alessa in some abstract form is doing or trying to do in this game. That brings us to nowhere. This place has a lot to talk about. We'll just kind of go in the order they're introduced. Starting with our key in the faucet. I just think this is supposed to be some weird dream imagery as opposed to anything meaningful or type of symbolism. Sure, we can associate it with being stuck and apply that to Alessa's general feelings, but I don't know, I can't really buy into that. It's a key in a faucet. It's stuck. I mean, I guess. What I can buy, though, is this Grim Reaper list. It's our first big puzzle of the area, and I think this is just more reinforcement on Alessa's want of death. The solution being alert, though, I can't really tie into anything. I guess you could associate it with Alessa being alert of everything, asleep, but not asleep. I don't think it really fits, though, but like I can kind of see it. That would make her nightmares feel more like sleep terrors than nightmares, although maybe I'm wrong. The astrology puzzle ends up not even being about astrology. Instead, I think this is more about the whole idea of two. It's been a long video, so I can't remember every detail I talked about, but over the course of the game, there is this big emphasis on two. Harry and Cheryl, Harry and Sybil, Lisa and Kaufman, Dolly and Harry, Alessa and Cheryl. Even Cheryl's clothing has representation with two cats. Two worlds, lots of mention in dialogue about two. Dolly saying only two remain. Alessa wanting to be just the two of them. I could be reading into this too much, way too much, way too much, but this is how I see this. We can even break down the answer. It's 6, 4, and 8, all even numbers that can be divisible by 2. Either they're hammering home this idea of 2, or I just have a fetish, I just have a fetish, you know, for 2. The number 2.
The number of the day is 2.
The Stone of Time, the antique shop, and the clock, all representations of Alessa being stuck in time, so to speak. Being injured at 7, you haven't had a lot of life to live, so these moments replay in our head over and over. That's why these locations are so important, and on top of it, we can assume Alessa had a rough 7 years growing up. I'm really basing this off of the way Dahlia treated Alessa and her school. Then we have the 7 years Alessa endured in order to give herself a chance at a happy life. All of this can easily tie into time. I might repeat myself in this section, so you'll have to forgive me. The altar here has 2 pictures with their own descriptions, one that's dedicated to the future, and one that shines a light on the darkness or past. The future door holds the key to the birdcage, and basically the end of the game, while the darkness door gives us information on White Claudia, alongside information on the fire, depending on your version. I think this is pretty straightforward. The fridge could easily be interpreted as the deity growing inside of Alessa. After all, this is one of the rare times where the game has this instant game over if you don't lock the chain. However, if I'm not mistaken, sorry for the dog in the background, if I'm not mistaken, this creature inside the fridge is a bloodsucker, technically. So maybe that doesn't stand true, I don't know. The electrified key may not seem like anything important, and it really isn't, but what you do before is. On our first time through the hospital, you have to turn the generator on, and it feels like you're breathing life into the building. If that's the concept we roll with, well, this can be interpreted as shutting things down, bringing things to an end, and it fits nicely. This key gives us access to Alessa's hospital room and the final item in order to access the final boss, so it's fitting to see this as ending the power to Alessa's life support. After all, both times when you interact with this generator, it makes mention of all the rooms it powers. Nowhere has the most interesting items in the game, both in its keys you pick up and the items needed for the final door. The keys are named after the 7 Olympian spirits, and the symbols associated with their names are the same ones we saw on the TV earlier. I'm sure I'm gonna get some of this wrong, but there seems to be a lot of astrology and alchemy associated with these spirits. There seems to be a lot of overlap in terms of what each spirit gives. A lot of them prolong life, some more than others, or knowledge in medicine, or change certain materials to others. When I first learned about this, I thought maybe we could assign each of these characters in the game to one of these spirits. After all, we do have 7. Harry, Sybil, Dahlia, Kaufman, Lisa, Cheryl, and Alessa. I couldn't really connect anything here, but maybe someone smarter than me in this field can. If you can leave a comment down below, I would love to, see that, check it out. Then I thought we can also assign our characters to the next items we find, if we remove Lisa, since at this point she's dead, so to speak. And instead of having Alessa and Cheryl as separate characters, we use them as one. Is this kind of cheating? Yeah, but so what? I told you we are reaching in this video. The 5 items being Amulet of Solomon, Crest of Mercury, Dagger of Melchior, Ankh, and Disc of Ouroboros. Amulet of Solomon is named after a biblical prophet or king of the same name. I'm sure this can lead down its own rabbit hole in connections to Silent Hill, but this seems like a far bigger task, so let's keep things paraphrased. When looking up things in regards to this item, there doesn't seem to be a real-world counterpart. Instead, everything points to a seal of Solomon, and that one looks a little familiar. Now, the seal is said to have given Solomon power over the supernatural, and this seal would later be the roots for things such as magic, occultism, and of course, alchemy. What about Solomon himself? Well, I don't have much knowledge in this aspect, but Wikipedia has this to say about his portrayal. I don't necessarily know if we can associate all of this with a character, but if we were to, I think the obvious one is Dahlia. The Crest of Mercury can be a bit confusing to decipher, as it seems to be a combination of both the Caduceus and the Rod of Asclepius. Both have ties to the mythological, one Roman and the other Greek. The Caduceus has ties to the god it's named after, Mercury. When looking at it from this angle, there's a few things that pop out to me. 1, Mercury was a messenger or a god of messages, but it's this point here I want to draw our attention to. He was also considered a god of abundance and commercial success. Okay, and when we tie in the other half, Rod of Asclepius, I think we can begin to assign the symbolism to somebody. The rod, I'm just gonna call it that, in the United States at least, is mostly tied to medicine. Well, when you have the medicine angle, abundance, and commercial success, well, we get Kaufman, right? At least that's what I think. I'm gonna be honest on the dagger and say I have nothing on this. All we have for this is mention of Melchior and how he searched for the Holy Child. I know when I say it in those terms, you might think Harry, and maybe, I don't feel confident in that. The Ankh is pretty simple, thankfully, just meaning life. See, now this would be more fitting for Harry in my opinion, as he is given a brand new life at the end, and he is the life of the game, so to speak. The next item is Disc of Ouroboros. I think this could only fit Alessa. Now, why is that? Well, we're gonna use some feature information, and as we know, Silent Hill 3 happens, and it's basically a happening again thing. We can even go back to the visual novel with Sybil's POV, and she makes mention of how this will all happen again. A constant cycle. Well, that about wraps it up in terms of locations. Let's finally go over the endings. In the playthrough section of the video, we cover what is referred to as the good plus ending. It is the best possible ending you can get. You have 2 big factors that determine your ending. A, did you help Kaufman? And B, did you save Sybil? Doing one or none of them determines which ending you get. Each ending also has its own ending track. Originally, I planned to go over the entire OST track by track, but it didn't seem much was there. But there is one I want to mention. Track 16, titled Moonchild. This track plays when down in the basement. I know it's not the secret basement, but I think it's fair to associate the basement with Alessa. Moonchild is basically a name for someone who was born under the Cancer sign in astrology, and can be seen as having an affinity to, well, moons. What else likes moons? Or glowing lights? Yeah, moths.
Finally, I'm a beautiful butterfly!
Again, me back here. I like how, this is supposed to be a joke about the whole, moths like the moon, Moonchild, but it is funny that I mentioned astrology here. and astrology, I won't say it's a big part of the game. It does rear its head a couple times throughout the game. You have, the big astrology puzzle, and while it's kind of like a red herring, it is like, showing things of Geminis and, twins, twos. I think it all kind of corresponds together. The good ending is the canonical ending of the game. You achieve this by fighting the Red Vial, but killing Sybil at her boss fight. The big difference here is the conversation Harry and Sybil have, which I really like. So to not hear Harry talk about his daughter and the backstory how they found her feels like lost details. Things play out relatively the same, minus Sybil shooting at Dahlia because, she's dead. Kaufman still tosses the Kool-Aid and we fight the Dream Demon. The ending track here is titled Killing Time, and this feels like the counterpart to the opening song. So in that respect, it makes things feel whole or puts a nice bow on things. On the other side, this is probably the most depressing ending despite the other two showing Harry essentially dying. In the good plus ending, despite the hellish nightmare, he at least makes it out with Sybil. Here, aside from the baby he just got, he is the sole survivor. We get the final CG scene and it's just Harry walking into darkness, looking up as if, what now? It fits with this game's melancholy atmosphere. In a way, things change forever. It's bittersweet. While Harry makes it out alive and finds the will to move on, things will never be the same. Yes, he has a daughter again, but it's not Cheryl. It's not the last connection he and his wife had. He went through a fiery hell to save her, coming across other people just to end up alone. It is very depressing while also being hopeful. Maybe Alessa will finally get to live a happy life free from the cults, and Harry might be able to find some peace with this new child. But in a way, it would be kind of difficult to look at said child and not be reminded of the horrors he endured, right? Very interesting ending when you think about it. And makes sense as to why this is the canon ending. To achieve the bad ending, we just don't do anything. Complete the game as is, or even save Kaufman, it doesn't factor at all. The bad ending is where we get the dialogue I mentioned earlier where Dahlia talks about Alessa being a god, and a very touching scene between Cheryl and Harry.
Daddy.
Cheryl!
Thank you, Daddy. Goodbye.
The game's final scene is of Harry dead, alone in his car with the ending track here titled Esperandote, translating roughly into waiting for you. Could this be Harry saying this to Cheryl, waiting on the other side for her, or perhaps even Harry's wife to Harry himself? My interpretation though, to us the player, at least in regards to the title. The contents of the track just reflect the game overall. The verse just talks about dreaming, wanting to be loved. Again, continuing with that theme of love that Alessa was seeking from Dahlia and found in Harry. So this could be applied to Alessa's POV. I also wanted to say there's some stuff we can apply to Harry, but really, it feels more like Alessa/Cheryl, especially with the line, I want to see myself loved and fall asleep in your arms. The second part seems way more in line with Harry, can't leave you or forget you. As seen in this ending, Harry stays as everything collapses around him, so affected by the loss of his daughter that he just can't move. The second half of this part could be in relation to his interactions with Alessa over the course of the game. Why are you torturing me? What do you want from me? This continues on in the next part. It either seems they forgot or they just don't know who this person is. Even by the end of the game, Harry doesn't know much about Alessa. He just knows small glimpses. Then in the final verse, we have this big burst of wanting to be told they love them, but still sounding so confused. Being able to understand and feel their pain, and more references to dreaming. If we take the song from the POV of Harry, then it could be said he's struggling and needs to know why. He doesn't have closure and needs to know more, which can then be applied in a meta way to the player. After all, you didn't explore Silent Hill in this ending, and have much more to discover, perhaps leading to the answers you seek. The bad plus ending is pretty bad. Look, Harry drops to his knees in Walmart and Sybil slaps him. No extra CG cutscene, just a fade of black. I really don't know what to make of this ending. I think I can maybe tie something here that we'll go over in characters, but even then, that itself is a big leap. Silent Hill also introduces UFO endings, a joke ending. But I do love Harry asking the little guys if they know Cheryl before being literally abducted. There isn't much really to say about Harry. He boils down to being a loving father doing whatever it takes to get his daughter back. Harry works much better when we introduce the rest of the cast and we start creating foils or drawing similarities. The same thing goes for Sybil. Sybil doesn't really have much story relevance. She kind of works as a way to keep Harry grounded, someone else who isn't from the town of Silent Hill and who Harry can look to as Can you believe this is really happening? Tell me I'm not the only one. But I do have a theory with Sybil, not a very strong one, with only a singular piece of evidence. Sybil is a stand-in for Harry's wife, not in a way of manifestation, but more in the literal sense. We don't have any idea of how Harry's wife was or interacted with Harry. All we have is a small clip from the beginning of the game. But if we were to reach a little and say Sybil shares characteristics with Harry's late wife, then it makes a little sense as to why we see Sybil replace her in the opening scene. That's all I got. I feel like we went over Alessa/Cheryl by extension since the entire game revolves around these two. I think I may have touched on this earlier, but not as in depth as I originally wrote. In my original theory, when Alessa and Cheryl merged, I talk about possession aspects, remembrance, and due to these things, the note that Harry finds wasn't a note for him, it was a note that Alessa wrote to Cheryl as a way to help her remember. Go to the school, a place we both know, as a way to jog your memory or awaken, if you will. This theory falls apart though because of the Q&A. Now, it could very well be Alessa who still wrote this note, but anyways, the whole point of this was to set up Alessa guiding Harry, not in the same way Dahlia does it, but more so in a way to prepare him to kill her. To me, it made sense then why he was fighting all of her metaphorical demons, as a way to strengthen his resolve. She was preparing him in case her plan A didn't work, but I don't buy into that theory anymore. I did find it interesting at a point in time, but I figured I'd at least talk about it. Much like Harry, Kaufman works best as a foil to Lisa specifically. He's quiet and doesn't really tell us much, but at the same time, he is the pivotal character. Not helping Kaufman nets you one of the bad endings. This is what makes him interesting when compared to Lisa. You meet both of these characters in the same room, but they couldn't be more opposite. Lisa quickly goes for an embrace, happy to see another person alive, while Kaufman is quick to shoot at us. Kaufman gives us no information about things he keeps to himself, and when prompted about Alessa, chooses to run away. Lisa is extremely helpful, constantly giving us information, ways to get to the other side, and is another rock for us in this crazy town. Yet, we can't help her at the end, and Kaufman and Lisa's fates are intertwined. In the same way he had done to her, she keeps Kaufman from escaping, forever remaining in a nightmare. I have a newfound appreciation for this character. When I first played Silent Hill, I thought, yeah, creepy old lady, messed up mom, but oh boy, she is so much more than that. Dahlia is very, very smart, not just in regards to her interactions with Harry, but Kaufman too. Her entire goal is to birth her god, and she will do it by any means necessary. Her cult creates PTV to give to Kaufman, and so Kaufman begins to take advantage once Alessa is burned. However, to Dahlia, this is probably not even a problem. Whatever she can do to hide Alessa's existence as they wait for Cheryl to return to Silent Hill, she will do. It isn't until the deaths of important figures that Kaufman starts to really buy into the magic aspect of things, and starts to create his own backup plan. Yet, Dahlia got wind of this, whether through gyromancy or snooping around the hospital, she found it and broke it. She uses this old crazy lady to her advantage. In Harry's case, she's playing on his worries for his daughter to do her bidding. At first, it's just to get Harry to capture Alessa, and then at some point, she realizes what Alessa's doing and begins to guide Harry to the correct locations. I don't really know why she wanted Harry to explore the antique shop, but hey. She then clearly knows Alessa's last two spots and has us counter her by going there. Now, the real crazy thing about Dahlia? Everything she said came true. She says we'll lose our daughter, which we do. We were the only ones who could stop it, and that was also true. The town will be lost to the abyss. This one's a bit murky. In one way, yes, Alessa dies at the end, and as we see, the whole realm or dream landscape is crushing once again by fire. Yet, Alessa technically lives on in this baby. Okay, time for the big one. Lisa is my favorite character in this game. Everyone else can be slotted somewhere. Kaufman ran the hospital, Dahlia is Alessa's mom, Sybil chose the wrong time to investigate, but Lisa's place in the overall story is so mysterious. I think one of those questions is Lisa dead? We see her interact with Kaufman in the intro, but by the end of the game, Lisa tells Harry she's always been one of them, and begins to bleed all over her body, leading you to question everything about her. Not only that, but Lisa is the only character we see in the nightmare and never the fog world. Which has to be intentional, right? If we are to believe Lisa is in fact dead, and what we see in the nightmare is a manifestation of her, well, why? We know she looked after Alessa, until it reached a point where it clearly was taking a mental toll on her, and then wanted to leave or quit the hospital. Kaufman, being the man he is, would more than likely see this as a liability and tries to keep her to stay, since she could technically tell people about what she knows. This is reflected in the VHS tape where she says she won't tell a soul. I think this would make it more than likely if someone were to have killed Lisa, it would have to be Kaufman. We only have one piece of evidence that could even point to this, and it's in the intro cutscene. Well, we might have circumstantial evidence, but in the intro scene, we have this scene here of Lisa laughing hysterically. And this kind of looks like the room we find her in, but of course, the normal version. The only reason I had this thought was because of the Book of Lost Memories. It goes over the intro giving some insight. It's usually pretty bare, but here, it asks the question of, could this be the state induced by the drug Kaufman gave her? If Kaufman did give her a drug, we could easily assume it could be PTV, since we do have evidence of unnatural deaths that show no symptoms. Could it have been an overdose of PTV? This depends on which side you end up on, the side that the cult/Dolly did the murders or Kaufman. The Q&A seems to lean more towards the cult, but in-game characters tend to lean to Kaufman, like seen in the diaries. We also have Kaufman cutting out the newspaper article. Whether he was paranoid or wanted to keep evidence towards Dahlia, it's unclear. Lost Memories is not flat out saying he killed Lisa, but it does make you question, and this brings us to the circumstantial evidence. What is our very first cutscene with Kaufman? Well, it's him slumped over in a chair with a corpse underneath him. Not just any corpse, but an air screamer. The enemy that resembles a bird, and in both the hospital and in Nowhere, there is a bird cage. This could be seen as Alessa, but what if it's meant for both Alessa and Lisa? After all, in this game's story, the two are closely connected, with both wanting the same thing: freedom. Again, it's not a fact that Kaufman killed her, but you do have to say, it kind of makes some sense. So I wanted to add a little bit more about Kaufman here. I wanted to note that it is very interesting that Kaufman, in terms of enemies, is the only character that has interactions with them. Obviously, Dolly at the end of the game, you know, the whole final boss and everything, but in terms of normal enemies, I can't recall Sybil ever making mention of seeing them or anything like that. I think she may mention in the antique shop, and if she does, I will include this here, or if she doesn't, then, you know, I'll say that or show something about that. But we have two instances of Kaufman interacting with enemies. We have the bird, as I alluded to, who could be either a representation of Alessa or Lisa or even both. But then we have Annie's bar, which is, okay, so if we go by that Lisa is the bird, right? So if we go by that Lisa is the bird, then Mumblers, who technically can represent the children, could be seen as Alessa, right? As a kid. And I wanted to add that because I think that is very important for the overall conversation of Kaufman. Okay, now back to the regular stuff. Speaking of the hospital, it is connected to Lisa in the same way it is to Alessa, which brings us to the comment Harry says down in Alessa's room. It looks like someone has been here. I think he has to mean recently, right? That someone was just here and not like, wow, someone must have been down here. If it's the latter, we can toss all this I'm about to say to the side. But if it's the former, well, that spices things up. We only have two options as to who, either Alessa or Lisa. Lisa makes the most sense, but if it's Alessa, well then maybe this is the point where they merged. After all, when we run into Dahlia after this, she says, we were too late. And if it was Alessa, we can presume she's the one who left the key for us. Did she want us to meet Lisa? And if so, why? The only thing I can think of is Lisa and Harry being two people who cared for or loved Alessa. Harry's is pretty straightforward, while Lisa needs a little bit of outside thinking. Lisa never shows hostility towards Alessa and only sadness, asking what's keeping this child alive, and the whole circumstance just really eating her alive. But she never outright declares a love for Alessa. To her, maybe she's just doing her job, and for Alessa, she just found someone who was finally nice to her. The only thing I can think that points to this is our introduction to Lisa. It is the only time I believe our flashlight is shown in a CG cutscene, and the light shines on Lisa, illuminating her in the darkness. A ray of hope, if you will. Now, as for Lisa being the one down in the basement, we of course find the videotape down here, but can't really see what's on it until Nowhere. On top of that, Lisa doesn't recall anything about the basement or even going down there, well, at least the first time we talked to her. When we talk to her in Nowhere, she mentions the basement and has gone down there, Now, this next part is another reach. We have evidence of time jumps with the whole antique shop segment. My theory on this is, if Lisa was the one in the basement, it wasn't the Lisa we ran into the first time, but instead, Nowhere Lisa. Knowing to leave the key for Harry, knowing Harry ends up down there at some point, yes, this does mean time stuff, and would be the only instance of it, so not really giving it much credence, but I like this, so I'm gonna keep it. If Lisa is a manifestation, which all signs point to a yes, what is she a manifestation of, since all of the creatures in Silent Hill tend to be a metaphor for something? I've seen people mention the remaining good left in Alessa, which I can see, but if you ask me, Lisa is a manifestation of Alessa's love or want of love. It is the closest thing that we know of her being taken care of. Even if Lisa was just doing her job, it is the kindest thing this girl has ever saw probably. Lisa and Alessa just share so many similarities. We have the hospital connection, both being stuck there, but this manifestation of Lisa could be seen as more of a direct one-to-one of Alessa if we wanted to get a bit abstract. Is there the real Lisa somewhere in there? Yes, however, I think we only have two real instances of seeing the real Lisa, that being the journal and the VHS tape. Everything else is up to your interpretation if you ask me. Lisa in all instances with Harry is helpful, but there's this childlike fear with her. She's constantly clinging to Harry, wanting company, and it never feels sexualized. It's more in the context of a child who lost their parent at a supermarket and doesn't know what to do. She wants Harry to stay with her, but won't leave the hospital. I could be completely wrong here and just reaching. I guess we'll never know. I said, we'll never know. This brings us to our very last topic on Silent Hill. Lisa's name was derived of an actress, a murdering nurse, and Judy Garland, who starred in The Wizard of Oz. So, let's talk about Fairytales. I thought on this part for such a long time. In fact, it didn't even make the first part of the script. Fairytales are clearly important in Silent Hill and to Alessa, but I couldn't wrap my head around how it connects to the story outside of Alessa being an impressionable young girl and liking these stories. There's something called the Silent Hill problem, which I did all over this video. Basically, you can read too much into this game. Not every single moment is some handcrafted symbolism. Sometimes something looks cool, or it's there because at the end of the day, it's still a game. But like I said, if you like this franchise, it is hard not to do this yourself, whether intentional or not. It's what makes this game so fun to discuss. Yes, it can come off a bit pretentious, as if this is some high quality art game, and at certain times it is for sure, but others? I get it. I felt like this was fitting, so we're gonna include it. We have two big fairy tales that I mentioned, Wizard of Oz and Alice in Wonderland. Their only reference is characters in the shape of keys and puzzle blocks. But what if we take these characters and assign them to the characters in Silent Hill? Is there any correspondence to which I say yes? For Wizard of Oz to even make sense, we would have to assign characters to their wants, to which there are 4 for the big cast. Dorothy wants to go home, the Tin Man wants a heart, the Scarecrow wants a brain, and the Lion wants courage. So, how do we go about assigning who where? Well, we start with the name. In the character background, we see that a certain nurse was named after 2 people. Her first name being after a murdering nurse in a movie, and her last name being after the actress in The Wizard of Oz. So I think it's fair to say Lisa represents Dorothy here. Dorothy wants to go home in the movie, to leave Oz, in the same way Lisa wants to leave the hospital. We can get a bit deeper here though, and bring back Lisa and Alessa's connection as well. If we buy that Lisa is a manifestation, then in this case it could be linked to Alessa's want to also leave the hospital. So in a way, Alessa equals Lisa, who then equals Dorothy. The Tin Man representative is pretty easy. He wants a heart to feel love and empathy again. Harry is the only character who is strongly motivated by empathetic love in this game. It's constantly reinforced throughout the game. The Scarecrow wanting a brain could be seen as smart, someone who's intelligent. I realize I just said the same thing twice. But I think this is Kaufman. Kaufman is a smart man. His appearance is very businesslike. He runs a drug ring, but he knows how to keep people quiet, so I feel comfortable with this one. I think I could see an argument for Dahlia, but I think if we were to expand past the characters named in-game, then she would be more fitting for Oz himself. A con man, someone who could easily play other people and was then shunned away at the end. While we're here, I think Alessa could be seen as Galinda. She appears very late in the book, just like Alessa does in-game. The line is very straightforward as well. Sybil. We have the corresponding key found in a police cruiser, and having an actual officer, I think this just works. Now, I know what you're saying. It sounds like all of these characters already have what they want. Harry has love, Kaufman is smart, Sybil is brave. The only one who may even fit this want is Lisa, yet she herself says she can't leave and belongs there. So, the only way this works is if we look at it as an inverse. That instead of leading to happiness or something you had all along, it instead leads to your doom or it's taken away from you. Lisa wanting to leave and pursuing that heavily led to her maybe dying. Harry's love for Cheryl in a way led them to Silent Hill in the first place. After all, Cheryl suggested they go and Harry obliged, and why wouldn't he? It's his daughter who means everything to him. Sybil's courage led to her going by herself to the amusement park and ending up with a parasite, with the only action to stop it to be to kill her. I mean, technically you could save her, but that's not canon, so like, it's cheating. Kaufman thinking he was so smart and outwitting Dahlia made him lose sight of Lisa, and thus stuck in the fading nightmare. That's all I have for that connection. The Alice in Wonderland connection is a lot harder to make. At first, it went something like this. Alice is Harry, the main character transported to another world. Cheryl/Alessa is the White Rabbit. The whole chasing after the rabbit turns into you going down the rabbit hole. The Mad Hatter could be Lisa, someone who is a bit crazy and speaking in riddles. Cheshire the Cat could also be Alessa, as the cat is seen as ambiguous, which Alessa's role is, it's never clear and cut. Leaving the Queen of Hearts as Dahlia, a dictator, someone who says do it and everyone does. Now, if you played the game, you might have realized my mistake almost immediately. There is no cat plate. It's a turtle. I don't know how I forgot that, which makes all of this kind of incomplete because I didn't know who the hell Mock Turtle was. So yeah, I'm not gonna, I recorded that line and I realize here as I'm looking at the script, because then I say, but if we remove the rabbit, and you know, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, hey Chase, is it the rabbit or is it the cat? Because you said cat. You said there's no cat plate. So, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Okay, anyways, we'll play on now. So, if we remove the rabbit, then I think this still kind of fits. We would just need to find out who the Mock Turtle would be, and from what I read, it seems like it's a character who has this nostalgic element, longing for the past. Could this be Kaufman? Could it be Harry, because Harry wants to go back to his daughter, who is technically not there anymore? I don't know, this one left me really stumped. The Oz one I felt pretty confident on, but this just doesn't fit as neatly. And maybe it's just a game thing and I'm just doing the Silent Hill problem. I'm not sure. That is the only way I could connect these two. If you thought of some connection, please leave it down below as this really does fascinate me. Before we sign off on some closing thoughts, let's quickly talk about the remake. We don't have anything outside of the fact that Bloober is doing it, and the Silent Hill 2 remake was pretty solid. While 2 is still considerably old, 1 was a PS1 title, and while it did have a bit of a reimagining, it is the game out of the series that could use a remake. However, it is also probably the hardest one to do. See, Silent Hill 1 is very unique when compared to the rest of the series. It has this air of mystery to it, alongside this subtle atmosphere. It isn't constantly banging your head with scary moments or even difficult situations. Instead, in a way, it feels like being absorbed into the town. Things don't make sense, and Harry is often very confused. Where Silent Hill 2 had a pretty solid framework being a PS2 game, it was pretty easy to lift things up, with the hardest thing probably being combat, which they did a okay job on. However, if there was one reason why I think Bloober would do a solid job with Silent Hill 1, it would be because of the Eddie boss fight. In the original game, the fight is, it's not good, but the remake really amps up that fight, turning into this really well done segment. So if anything gives me hope for a solid remake of 1, it would be that. In terms of adding things, 1 is weird in that regard, whereas in 2, maybe you can get away with a few things here and there since, you know, it's all about James. 1 is about Alessa, and adding more would mean adding to that character. You can't just add a whole new area without it meaning something to said character, but we can expand on one section in my opinion. That being the shopping area. I think this would be the easiest thing to do. It already has a boss fight lined up and doesn't need to be like a really big expanded area, but some added meat here would work, at least to me. Whatever. You could add more of Harry's own nightmare here if you wanted to get really weird. I trust Bloober. I think the remake will be pretty good. Plus, with doing this game, I don't have to make another video before it comes out. That's always a plus. We've talked a lot about Silent Hill, but you may have the lingering question of, what is Silent Hill about? From what we talked about, you may think it's a psychological horror game, And that's true. However, that's just the base. You may think the stuff with Alessa and the cult is the main story, but technically we're seeing the aftermath of a long plan. We had to piece things together in order to understand what was going on. And Alessa, while being a prominent figure in the story of Silent Hill, isn't the protagonist. Harry Mason is. We see the story play out through his POV, which, in my opinion, makes the story of Silent Hill 1 a story about loss and the early stages of grief. Every ending in this game, aside from the UFO one, has some sort of connection to loss and grief. No matter what the ending is, Harry loses his daughter, the most important person to him, and the only lasting connection to his wife, and in a way, losing her again. The 5 stages of grief are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Humans are complex beings, and you're not going to follow stage 1 through 5. Sometimes you jump around, and sometimes you fall back. If we apply this to Harry, I think we only see 2 of these stages, that being denial and depression. Throughout all of Harry's interactions, he is never angry with people. Maybe at the very end he's a bit fed up, but he is not taking his anger out on anyone. We can make an argument for him showing denial. The stage is described as a temporary refusal to accept the reality of the loss, acting as a buffer against overwhelming emotions. This is a bit tricky, because like I said, Harry doesn't really show his emotions. We get very brief moments like with Sybil in the antique shop. The only time we get to see Harry's emotions finally overwhelm him are in the final moments in each ending. The good plus ending, we see a smile towards Sybil, and have this kind of uplifting sound play us out. In the bad endings, Harry is completely defeated, unable to move forward, and only barely reacting depending on if Sybil is around or not. In the good ending is where I think the depression stage begins. Here we have this stage described as intense sadness, despair, and withdrawal as the reality of the loss sets in. To me, this accurately describes Harry here, and the somber tone this ending carries. And we know this is the canon ending. Now, maybe there's an argument for the rest of the stages showing up in Silent Hill 3, but we'll come to that when we get to that video. I think this is also a bit of a reach here, but I don't know how to say it. Like, we've been reaching all throughout this video. It's fine, okay? It's fine. So we have the stages mentioned reality, which we know from the Q&A was mentioned a lot itself. I feel like there's a lot more to unpack here, like maybe we can get really weird here and say the other characters could be the physical representation of the stages of grief. Hell, we can even make the argument Lisa goes through all of them, but this has been a very long video already. I'm sure there's things I missed that others have pointed out, and perhaps all of this, wow, that was a really hard perhaps, I'm sorry. Perhaps all of this has already been pointed out by somebody else. It's the nature of the beast. It's a good game, and there's a reason so many people talk about it to this day. I just hope you enjoyed my take and the way I showcase things. Silent Hill 1 is very special to me. It's the first Silent Hill 1, it's the first Silent Hill I beat. I actually own 2 and 3 for the PS2, but both games kind of creeped me out. Like, I couldn't get past the roller coaster part of the amusement park. I got super scared, you know? And, you know, I preferred cardboard at the time, you know?
I like money.
So I sold them at a garage sale for some Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and now the price for the physical games give me nightmares in itself. I love this story. The cult aspects, the storytelling being sparse, the characters, and while Silent Hill 2 has probably the stronger soundtrack, Tears of and Not Tomorrow are some of my favorite pieces of music of all time. Despite the game leaning towards a more melancholy and surreal horror feel, it still is decently scary. And what Team Silent achieved for a PS1 title is kind of impressive. You even have modern day horror games that try to replicate this aesthetic, and that says a lot. I had a lot of fun making this video, but don't expect Silent Hill 2 to be the next title. This was a lot of work, much more than I thought, as I had hoped to have this out before Silent Hill F, which, if you're seeing the date, that did not happen at all. In fact, I'm recording today on the 9th of October, and you're probably gonna see this like a week later, so like, hey! Which, yes, Silent Hill F will get a video. I am very excited for that game. I played through half of it so far. I have a lot of thoughts on it. I know a lot of people are you know, back and forth on it. It is going to be a very interesting topic, but I want to let it simmer a little bit before we go into a more hearty conversation. And with that brings things to an end for Silent Hill. Oh boy.